Really?
We are live. It is Thursday, February 8th, in Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. Continuing our work on the B Home Bill. We have Ellen in the witness chair, and we're just going to start by going over draft 8.1, which is expected.
It's Ellen Tchaikovsky, Auction Legislative Council. Today we're looking at draft 8.1, dated today's date. That's right.
8.1 is somewhere close.
There are a couple of things in my sections from draft 7.2 that we never went over, but
Yeah,
but
I think we should go over those just so another day doesn't go by that people don't know what's.
Well, and look, it's down to 60 pages.
We cut a lot out,
We did.
especially the TIF and there's a lot of language we cut out.
great. So you do have an updated outline as well. So I do also just want to say, I don't know if do you want to start looking at 7.2? Because what I will say is I fully rearranged all of my sections so that they are in logical order as
Okay.
opposed to just.
Great, thank you.
I'm okay looking at the
So-
new
Yeah,
draft.
I'm happy
Yeah.
looking at the new one, and I think that's great, because that's what we asked John a little yesterday. If we
Right.
could
Although I haven't fully done that yet, so.
That's okay. That's okay.
give a whole 24 hours.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, great. So the changes are highlighted in yellow. And yes, there are some sections that have been removed based on the prior conversation. So
Yes, because some of them are municipal zoning. It would be good to understand the sections we haven't gotten to before the planners get here.
So
Page 2 is a pretty big one, we should.
well,
Yeah, that's
did you want-
parking, right?
No.
Did you want to start with zoning or did you want to start with Act 250?
I wanna start where we haven't gotten to,
Okay.
which I think was municipal.
Yes, there was a handful of sections because we were trying to get to section 19
Right.
on Tuesday.
But I think so, first of all, like section 10. I don't know if it was just me, but I didn't quite, absorb that we had these two options and that one was a lot simpler.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, so I actually don't know where you want me to start. Do you want me to just go back to the prior draft? Because what's in the current draft is I make the choice because you told me to.
Right.
So,
Well, let's deal with the choice we have, unless it was a choice you wanted us to weigh in on again.
It was, just to clear the confusion here. We were tying ourselves in knots over the 1/5 of an acre becomes 4 units, and that could be 20 units on 1 acre. And I hadn't realized that there was a second option, which Representative Baumgart's had kind of brought to us through Ellen, of much simpler language about duplexes and quadruplexes. So maybe we should just start at the beginning
And explain that, that's sense.
and just go quickly through the changes and get to that. Since
The beginning of
the beginning of 8.1.
Okay.
Because I don't want people to feel like
Yeah.
later they realize I made competition.
okay. So Act 250 sections start on page 1. And it's page 2. So the Act 250 choices have been condensed. So on page 2, it is construction of 30 or more housing units in areas served by municipal water and sewer as defined in 4403, not located within a designated sector
And can I ask,
within 2 years.
I wanted to remind myself that this definition includes municipal water and sewer that might be septic or some other.
So
It's
this
broader
is
than-
the definition that you all passed last year.
Right.
That's very broad,
Right.
and it allows the town to define this area for themselves.
Okay.
And there are a list of things that could be in this area. But it is a long definition that you
Yes,
gave lots of options.
that Charlie emailed.
I don't know if that is the same that Charlie emailed.
It is.
It is good, okay.
So yeah,
And that's
so
fine.
right.
Boy, I got waylaid in the hall.
That's okay.
I was in the building, Randy saw me.
I saw you, yeah. We can pass for it.
Yeah. So we are on, Senator Cummings, page 2 of a new draft,
Oh,
8.1. Right, yes, we're two steps forward here.
When I have to recycle these, I lose all my notes that are on.
I know, I did the same thing with one of the draft.
I can't read mine.
Oh,
That's also true.
Yeah.
There's no recycle bin.
I know, I've got it over
Maybe.
there. It's okay, I've got a pile here.
Okay,
Okay.
so,
Madam Chair,
yeah,
just to, may
I just wanna make sure
Okay.
Senator Cummings knows,
Okay.
right on page 2, we said served by municipal water and sewer. And this ties back to the definition we created last year that lets a town define what that means.
Okay.
So that is broad and it can include rural areas that, you know, don't have
Okay.
really sophisticated infrastructure. Senator Harris.
Yeah, well, they're gonna have water. I mean,
I don't know, maybe
I
I
guess-
guess this the wrong
I
word.
guess, yeah.
We're not even talking about suburban and urban. areas.
Right, what we changed here was we said, that initially this was proposed to be
Feasibly served.
So
Yeah.
it definitely makes sense to go to search because there's not a good definition of feasibly. But then I'm just trying to remember how this fits in the context of everything because it says not located within a designated center.
So
So-
this is 30 by 2 in
Right.
other places.
Right,
Yeah.
but I'm just trying to recall how, and I'm not saying we talk about this now, but. So this is not in the designated area. It seems like it should be less than we've authorized in a designated area. Because the designated areas are meant for development. So I just don't, I've been focusing on the served and not that. So we just need to understand that.
Designated areas, we heard last year, were villages were set up as your governmental town square thing. They were not set up for where you want to put housing. And in some of them, there really is any room to put a quadruplex. But I think if the city has run water and sewer out there, they most certainly expect it to be a development area. Because it's very expensive to run water and sewer.
I agree that water and sewer is
Can I
actually
clarify?
one.
Yeah.
We're
No, I
talking
just-
about tier 2.
I wanna
Tier 2.
clarify what I
Yeah.
asked Ellen for because it could be hard to look at the language and make sense of it. So.
That's another, oh, that's the.
And I think the tiers might not even be helping us anymore right now, because we're also talking about interim proposals that, you know, we're working with others to help define the tiers, but if, let's say the tiers did shift in a designated area, we're talking about a full exemption. You could
All
call
the
that tier 1
designated areas are.
Tier 1
Yeah.
A or tier 2.
And there's new designated areas, we haven't really talked about.
They are trying to clean that up for us.
Yeah.
And again, I am telling everyone that my intent is to try and go to next week, because that proposal
Would be helpful.
needs a lot of,
Okay, so designated areas are exempt from Act 250 completely, and that
No,
includes the
certain
new
designated.
designations.
Not all, certain designated.
So like maybe the core
in
designations.
this, in my proposal, I have all designated areas.
Okay,
No,
so
tier 3 is not, I mean, tier 2 and 3 are gonna be slightly different.
But those
Sorry,
aren't-
that's tier
Those
1
aren't,
A.
those aren't designated.
Nobody's
area.
got water and sewer running into a tier 3 area.
Right.
This is how expensive to run. that.
I understand, but so we're using different words for different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at some point,
This tier 2.
I think we need to just have some sort of
For example.
chart, right, of designated areas and what they can do.
Yes,
I
So
would
that's
like,
just my point here.
yes.
I would like to see a map.
Well,
I have asked.
Well,
And I'd like, I
No,
know the city
yeah.
of Montpelier.
Yes.
I did ask to apply twice.
Right.
I would like to see what has Montpelier designated, because this has all happened since I left. I know we didn't get any growth areas, when we did the original master plan, because
Right.
nobody wanted anything to change.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that downtown is your designated area. I don't know what Sabins pasture, which all smart growth says should have housing in there, is designated because the top of that pasture is residential. And so if
So we need to visualize.
we need to visualize, I don't know
Yes.
where that would
I-
be. It's
I
got
hear you.
water and sewer running
Yeah.
on both ends.
I will say, I reached out to the HCD this morning and said, if you have time to make a map of what you don't like, please help us make a map of what you do want. So they are working on that.
You mentioned a few minutes ago that they are working on straightening some of this out.
Yes.
Like, who is they?
I think there's just a few people left standing, I will say, who are trying to be helpful. They include Alex Farrell, Charlie Baker, Catherine Dimitrick, even though she's sick. To some extent, Chris Cochran, but they aren't feeling good about the language that says 308, and I don't think that's a you thing. I think they lacked clarity on some pieces there as well. So they included other stakeholders and met Monday, I think, and are continuing to talk this week. And are going to propose tighter language. So it's not happening, you know, in a. It's going to come to us in a democratic fashion. But Ellen is doing the renewable energy standard bill. This bill, lots of bills, so we need to
We
capacity.
need more like councils. Well, I feel guilty asking anybody to do anything because everyone that comes through my room is so burdened.
Right, yes, this is true.
The map that we have from last year would give us a really good approximation. It has the 3 or 4 designated areas that we talked about and water and sewer on it. So we could zoom into Montpelier. So
Well,
I can talk to you after.
yes, that we can look at the maps we have. We,
Sure, it's that.
Well, we had them make one last year.
Yeah.
And so that one is still relevant if we're talking about the designated area.
If we're talking about water and sewer.
And water and
And
sewer.
water.
Those
Right.
things are both on the map.
And I'm pretty sure the water and sewer goes out in some cases beyond the.
Yes,
right,
yeah.
We know that because we've got the
Yeah.
pre-existing development.
right, so. Let me just speak my intent of how we use our triggers or our exemptions now. But without getting too weeds on the tiers, because there are a lot of weeds there. So you have your, you know, really core designated area and a quarter mile or half mile around them, depending on the designated area. That has a full exemption. The municipal water and sewer kind of in a band around that, but also these transit corridors. We haven't talked about this. I'm still working to define them. And I think Catherine Dimitrick gets what I'm saying, but you know, I've just been working with Ellen to try and put something on paper. Those would have an up to 75 exemption. So I could say eventually that would be my vision, tier 1A and B, but I don't want to confuse anybody. Tier 2 has been a big question mark, and I personally right now think that's a good way to say everywhere else in a municipality that has zoning is 30 by 2. Everywhere else in a municipality that's not put in tier 3 that doesn't have zoning, that's 30 by 2, but just for affordable and senior housing. And then tier 3 has to be redefined because that's where a lot of the controversies come up about the road rule, the elevation, things that will look really different in the 2 maps that are.
But
I believe the road rule comes into play in tier 2 also.
The road rule comes into play, yes, you're right, so
So
road
I mean,
rule
I'm
is there.
sorry.
But what I'm saying is, we have a 2,000 foot road rule, which is what the stakeholders agreed on out of session. The House has a 500 foot road rule,
It needs to be.
and they bring the elevation down 500 feet.
Yeah.
While we need to get people out of floodplains, and so that's some of where the map controversies are coming from. Do I think yesterday was helpful to our conversation? Not necessarily, but. And this is the governor's press conference, because now I'm getting calls about, what are you doing? Why is this map all red? But I hope it made sense what I said, that people are really looking forward to our interim exemptions and possibly making a more general, creating more general guidance around what would be included in the ultimate tiers, but maybe not trying to be so prescriptive because we're not gonna get a map every day that tells us what we're doing. I will say also, I haven't told most people this, I just thought of it this morning, but I would like to work on intent language that talks about a healthy vacancy rate, 50 by 50, you know, ending housing segregation and closing homeownership gaps, you know, economic zones where we can innovate. I want to get us back on the same page because I think in many ways we are. And 50 by 50 for protected land still seems perfectly reasonable if we're building elsewhere. That map obviously looks like 90 by 10, you know,
So 50 by 50 is 50% conserved by
by
2050.
yeah, which is different than red areas for 90% of the state is kind of what we saw yesterday. So
So I don't, if some of us didn't see it, so at some point, I mean, I'm busy
Yeah,
being a
yeah, I
senator,
didn't
I'm
see
not
it.
No,
busy
I know,
processing
I know.
what I'm saying in the press.
yes, that's, sorry, that's fine. They sent a copy to the Natural Resources Committee chairs after their press conference. So I was sitting next to Bray when he got his map.
Oh, in finance.
So they made a
Yeah.
map.
So when we talked about map, that came up for me that we need help to visualize what we're doing. Right now, there are just maps to say, alert, you know, this is what we don't want. So I'd like us to have the capacity and help from the administration on what we do want.
I'm also not at this point ready to say tier two only affordable housing.
Hmm.
Because tier two may well be a place
For mixed.
for higher end housing because it's further up the mountain, it's
Right. So
less dense.
yeah,
Um,
what I was saying was tier two with zoning 30 by 2, tier
Yes.
2 without zoning 30 by 2 affordable. So 60% of the state. And I think, you know, sure, if someone wants to do their higher end housing on a hillside, that's fine. I think that
meaning something a nurse
Not in a rich
or a
Yeah,
teacher.
yeah.
Yes.
so that to me is, I'm thinking about this 30 unit project that was gonna be in Montgomery. Single family home, kept affordable, and the neighbors said, we're gonna get Act 250 involved, and they abandoned it. So I hear exactly what you're saying, in places with zoning, I think they're ready for 30 by 2.
I think we need to reward places that have gone through zoning and
And get money for the
thoughtful
place to have
planning
it.
process. I think we need to limit development in places that have not done that process.
I just sent the map from last year to all of you, including Magali, and if we wanna put it up, this,
Magali, do you wanna put it up? That would be
I
great.
also
or not.
think
No,
we
fine.
need to be cognizant of balance. I haven't seen, you know, when have we built enough affordable units? If all we're building is affordable units for workers, but the administration can't afford that house.
Right,
Building workers for the janitor in the high school.
Yeah.
But if we are building
Yeah.
homes
For the
for
teachers,
teachers,
yeah.
then
And the
we throw the
principal, yeah.
whole thing
So-
off.
So
We-
a lot of the state would become 30 by 2 under this proposal.
So
An exemption for up to 30 units of housing,
30 units of housing within
2 years. Yeah,
no 2 miles, so
No
you
2
could
miles.
do 60 units.
2 years later. I don't like the
You
miles.
could do 30 this year and 30 next year,
You'd have to wait 2 years.
you'd have to wait 2 years.
But-
Okay.
well, next year to
Here's
get
what-
permits in.
Right.
we, as a state, are not building anything. We are enabling our partners, our nonprofit and
Yeah.
our for-profit, and what we're
Right.
trying to do is help give them tools
Right.
to do it
And
more
our-
affordably
right.
and quicker.
And our municipalities still have jurisdiction over all of those units.
Correct.
We're just saying they don't then need to go through Act 250 for 30 units of housing.
I
There's
keep
some.
seeing us leaving the municipalities out. We've taken a lot of power, or we've told them, you must, you must, you must.
Well, we can talk about that in the municipal zoning section, but in the Act 250 sections, we are leaving their processes intact and just saying, you don't have to do it again for the state.
Correct.
And the municipalities that end up being tier 1 can do almost whatever they want, which is another, that's a separate, I do have a concern. I wanna talk about development of regional impact at some point. I raised it before. It just, I'm not trying not to confuse everything.
Okay,
Yeah, but it does, the mall had to build.
But there could be a development that a municipality wants that would have an adverse impact on areas outside of the municipality. So we
Uh-huh.
need some sort of trigger, I think, to have a process that includes more than the municipality, so the
Okay.
regional commission.
yeah,
And so the term I've used in the
Yeah.
past is development of regional impact.
right.
With regional impact. I mean,
What,
Development
or
of
with,
hazard.
that's probably fine,
It's.
but
traffic.
something that is huge.
So I will say, we still have a very robust A and R process
yes.
for
No,
stormwater,
That's
Yeah.
not enough.
traffic.
No, it's traffic. The mall, when it went in, had to build traffic lights down
Right.
It had
the
a whole
bottom of the
traffic
hill.
impact.
It
Yeah.
had to improve the traffic lights at the hospital.
Right.
It had to do all kinds of things to help the surrounding
So
communities
let's-
deal with the
you-
traffic.
I registered that.
Okay.
I think our stakeholders will say if they feel like it is protected enough or it's not, and the 75 unit increase I have is just for housing. So most people agreed that in the designated areas, they are really rich with use and development could happen.
Chittenden County.
That included VNRC because they feel like there are other safeguards,
The interstate.
including commercial and industrial, and everywhere else, we're talking about housing caps.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But I still have that concern.
I just wanna make sure everyone's
Stakeholders.
understanding
Sure,
that.
sure.
Yeah.
No, that's a good.
And white is.
That happened in Rutland, it happened in Montpelier.
Or think about it powerfully.
Right.
being
So
somewhere.
while we
That's
have
why-
Ellen,
Yeah.
let's get back to the linkage.
So-
And we have the map, and that's
I think
beautiful.
this is a good change. On line 4 or 5.
Yes, I agree.
Page two.
Okay. Big page.
And in this, we're mostly dealing in tier 2.
Yes.
So on page 3, there is this concept that actually, now that you've just talked through all that, is not complete, but on page 3. So I'll need to update this language, but on line 9, the construction of housing projects such as cooperative condominiums or dwellings, or construction or maintenance of mobile homes or mobile home parks with 10 or more units, constructed or maintained on tract land owner controlled by a person within 5 miles within 2 years. So this should also have in a town with zoning.
So this is a good conversation, continuing what we were just talking about. I'm personally ready to let go of the 10x5x2 or 10x5x5.
I'm 2.
And just say, if they have zoning, it's 30x2, which allows them, I think, to build a mix of housing that really meets the needs of the workforce, as Senator Cummings is saying. And if, in my mind, if we've talked about this before, if you're constrained to 10x5x2, you're trying to get your money's worth out of 9 units, and those are gonna be more toward the McMansion side.
Right.
And so I'd rather just say 30x2 and let them cluster workforce housing or build some
Yes, cluster more.
house type things, But not, I think we should be done with 10x5x2 because I think it creates sprawl more than
I agree. I agree with that. And I think clustering more is better.
Right.
And rewarding towns with zoning is better.
So on the prior page, you have 30x2
Mhm.
with water and sewer.
In my mind, that was. There's a distinction between one B and 2 with zoning, which was the 75 units. Did the 75 units make it in?
It's at the end.
Okay.
This,
You're talking about 30x2 without.
I'm talking about 30x2 with zoning. Everywhere else that's not in an area with municipal water and sewer.
So
Without water and sewer?
So what's
Yeah.
with water and sewer?
75.
Okay, so that's not what it says on the prior page.
Right, I was gonna ask you if what I'm looking at. I was gonna get to that,
So
but
that's,
Okay.
we're about to cruise by
Yeah.
it, so if
Yeah.
you're on line 3, you're proposing that we enable in
Mhm.
towns with zoning and sewer and water, a building up to 75 more units.
and so we can see where that,
And then I thought what you were saying is
Yeah.
that we would, in towns without zoning, we would be building, that they'd be able to build 30
right too.
by 2 without zoning, because that would cluster more and have less sprawl.
So
I think I support that.
what I was
Now,
thinking,
Where are we on the page?
30 by 2 with zoning of any type of housing. And then without zoning, 30 by 2 affordable and senior housing.
Yeah.
You want 30 by 2, whatever type of
I don't
housing.
want. If we're encouraging towns to do zoning,
Mhm.
what you get is you will get senior housing. I mean, I was on this, planning housing in making towns take affordable housing. They all took senior housing, because seniors aren't a threat,
Mhm.
they're nice, they stay in their room. If you throw this wide open,
So
you're gonna get, and I'm not sure senior housing belongs in Williamstown. Where it's not here, and that's my closest town.
Yeah.
And no sprawl and no housing, but has some housing, but they aren't building like crazy, and
I'm
that's not where you wanna put housing, because it's not near the hospital, it's not near the grocery store, it's not.
I think what we're I think our rural areas are saying, don't leave us out, don't make us protected tier 3. And then like some seniors do wanna still live in Glover and Williamstown, and they don't wanna move to a high rise in Burlington because it's near the hospital. And all it does, it still requires municipal planning and a municipal process. But it also says you don't have to add the expense of Act 250, because that's gonna make your affordable and senior housing more expensive by the end. It's kind of the Brattleboro situation, even though I don't wanna confuse where that was. But if you have, senior housing go through this long process, it gets really expensive. And I'm okay right now experimenting with this to see if they choose senior housing, because we need seniors to feel comfortable
lot of
moving out of
seniors.
their single family
Yes, we do.
home,
We have a lot of seniors coming down the pike here.
who wanna live not, in a
City
in
of
population.
Montpelier raises my taxes $3,000 next year, which is quite possible. I will be looking for a place to live, but there's no place for me to move.
That's exactly, so you might wanna live
I
in a
used to-
clustered cottage,
No, I would like to live at the end of my street where we used to put up little Bechtel raised ranches. 2 bedrooms, little raised ranch, little flat ranch.
Right,
They're the end of my street. We haven't built any of those. And the condos are now going for $300,000.
right, and that's. I think we're on the same page, I really think that's what I'm trying to accomplish, is more choice for seniors. And it's not, 30 units doesn't have to be, one high rise, it can be a little cluster of cottages,
Okay,
and it can be
I think
15, it's just up to.
if, what we need to be focusing on is workforce housing. Our biggest problem is our demographics. Too many of us are old and not
But we
working.
also need to live somewhere.
Well, that's what I said, that's the housing we should be working on. The starter home, the place you move into once you have 2 kids and
Right.
you don't wanna be in a little
Yeah.
tiny apartment downtown. You
Right,
wanna have some room to run
yeah,
around.
I can tell you, like, I can show you a chart even, around the country. 30+% of 3-bedroom homes are in the hands of seniors. Millennials who now have kids, they're at 13 to 15% of those 3-bedroom.
They're
homes.
desperate for.
They're
That's what
desperate
we
for
need.
those 3-bedroom homes, and seniors are desperate to get out of them somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know the seniors are desperate. I don't want to leave my home. It's not a house. It's my home.
And that
It's
would be
where
your
I raise
choice.
my kids. But
I
At
have a
some
lot of
point-
people coming to me and saying, where am I gonna live? I'd like to give my single family home up.
yeah,
I have stairs, you know, I wanna live in the center of Jericho or,
We hear
you
both.
know,
We
yeah,
we hear both.
exactly.
We hear seniors who wanna age in place.
right,
Who wanna stay in their home and who are financially endowed enough to be able to afford the help
Exactly.
to let them age in place.
Yeah.
There are a lot of other seniors who are either divorced or who are widowed or
Right.
who are single, who don't wanna live in a big home anymore. So we have both. We have to be flexible. We have to build
Right.
all types of housing. We know that. But we need to do it in a thoughtful, clustered way. And I think that's all we're trying to do here.
yes.
And I think what we want in particularly tier 2 is mixed income housing. We need workforce housing, we need also mixed income and higher income housing. I think we're all on the same page.
I think if you're looking at that missing middle starter home, you're dealing with both seniors
Yes,
and your workforce.
yes, you are,
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
correct.
right,
And we just need to keep the
Right.
balance.
right.
Except the young families may not need walk-in showers. Sure.
My daughter had one at her condo at St. Michael's College.
Yeah, they were great.
People need
Yeah,
accessibility.
And
at all
people
ages.
need accessibility no matter what the age is. I'm just.
People need choice.
Right, people
People
just
need
want
choice.
choice.
People need.
What I'm
Yes,
saying about that
that's
data is
Yeah.
it's pointing to a lot of bottlenecks in our housing system. People don't have choice to get a 3-bedroom place or a condo and have an HOA take care of their, you know, plowing, et cetera. People want choice to decide, I'm gonna live in a more populated place near the hospital, or I'm still enjoying my time in my
My
3-bedroom.
And if I need help, I'm gonna bring it
Exactly.
in.
This is
think-
about choice.
Yes, and if
And
we
creating
build
more choice.
housing, we will be building choice. If we start focusing on, this is for seniors and this, if we build that middle,
Yeah.
that starter or retirement
Right.
downsizing house, we will take care of it. And by, the word senior makes things less threatening, and a lot of this is, Gus Seelig said, people have a hard time
Yeah.
with change. And
I guess,
there's nothing saying that the towns
right.
are, that you're gonna get that amount of housing, and we haven't even talked about the market with builders.
Sure. I'm asking if what you're advocating for is 30 by 2 everywhere that a municipality wants it. Instead, so what we have right now is towns with zoning where they've designated an area for growth. They would have 30 by 2 automatically, no caveats.
That's right.
Places where they haven't had a chance to do their zoning bylaws, 30 by 2, affordable and senior, only specifically in my mind, because those are usually done by folks who have the staffing and the expertise to
Look
get it done.
at the affordable housing that got built here, that's being built in Barry right now. It's up on the hill. It is away from everything. There's no bus service. There's no way to get downtown to service. If you take that whole tier 2, which I'm assuming is more rural than tier 1, and you say, oh, this is where you could do your affordable housing, you're gonna find your affordable housing stuck
Right.
out on the hill in Williamstown.
Right.
Um,
So the exemptions are much bigger for all types of housing in the settled areas. I'm trying to make sure the rural areas don't feel like they get no relief from Act 250 to build some types of housing. That's the intent with
then
this.
give them the ability to build, you know, all kinds of housing, maybe not 30 units of it, but give them the ability, don't just, if you think they ought to have the ability to build something, don't limit them to senior and affordable housing, because I think the tendency in most towns is to put that low income housing where I'm not gonna see it and it's not gonna bother me. And
They wouldn't necessarily have jurisdiction over that, right? It would be, each town would get to decide, we do need, a cluster of these types of houses.
or we don't want them at all. I mean,
We are giving the municipality a lot of control in this situation.
we're sitting in a municipality, it has water, sewer, it has a
Mhm.
planning director.
Yeah.
I'm thinking 10 miles out the road
Right.
that has no play help. That, your zoning is all volunteers and there's
Mhm.
no zoning person that's trained to help you.
Yeah.
We're gonna help you update. You get 20, 30 miles out of
Mhm.
here. And 30 units of housing is more than the size of the town. I think
So Bina, you look like you wanted to weigh in.
I'm sorry,
Sorry, we were talking
Yeah.
about.
something else. We're talking about something in Woodstock.
I didn't mean to call you out, but before we were talking to Senator Clarkson, it looked like you might have some
Thoughts.
thoughts
On the housing?
on the
Tier two.
tier two,
Oh.
tier two period, because I will just say tier two is so undefined right now,
yes.
and I'm worried about that.
So I had said,
Yeah.
I wish we'd gotten language and weigh-in from the environment community of lawyers who we thought agreed to work on language for us for tier two,
Right.
which we're missing right now.
I've seen a general map, but I don't know where tier 2 is in the towns I'm familiar with.
Mhm.
I don't know where tier 1 is. I think tier 3 is up on all the mountaintops, but it's hard for me. We're trying to regulate something that doesn't exist yet. And we're
It exists, it just
it
hasn't been.
exists in
Haven't
planners'
used yet.
minds, but
Right.
there's nothing the town can look at. And I just think it's
Something we-
dangerous to say, if you don't have any planning and zoning, you can put in 30 units of affordable or senior housing anywhere in your town. I have hesitations because I think we may set up a situation that hurts the people we're trying to help more. I don't want to see another housing low income housing development stuck up on the side of a hill where nobody will see it and they won't bother us. And I think to do those two kinds of housing and not do any allowable for workforce housing is not a rational thing to do.
So
Okay.
I hear you, and what I think I hear you saying is we shouldn't be making any rules about places in tier 2 without zoning until we have the maps and done the additional work. That we should let the towns make the decision, but that you might be open to tier 2 towns that have done zoning with water and sewer.
If you have zoning and water and sewer, I'm prepared to trust the towns.
I think that's what I hear you're saying,
Yeah.
is that we should, and then let the process play out, let the mapping work play out, let the towns make their decisions about what is in what tier. And then, and this would fall under the interim period of letting whatever's happening in those towns happen now, keeping current law for tier 2 towns without zoning and water and sewer. So I actually, I hear you on that, and because it is, I think we don't want unintended consequences in terms of what gets built, and we have an interim period, I mean, we're
Right.
here.
Right. We can sort of crystallize this conversation and keep it in mind. I am trying to be responsive to our rural folks who are saying, please don't let this tier process resortify our areas. Sabina?
I was, Sabina Haskell, Chair of the NRB. Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just gonna say, yesterday, in another committee, Catherine Dimitrick shared her map of Richford. I don't know, And
She shared Franklin County with us, but not a
she
specific town.
showed Richford and how, which is a small community,
Yeah,
and how it, and she mapped it with the keeping in mind the flooding area, because whole downtown is in the flooding area,
yeah.
and how these new planned growth areas, neighborhoods, whatever you wanna call them, just spread out from there, and you can see all the housing and different things going on and spread out it's still in a compact area.
Yeah,
And then there was another transition. It was very effective demonstration, visualization of helping rural communities, towns, villages, how they can grow. That's both, responsible and keeps the working lands working, et cetera, et cetera.
And that defines tier 2 in a specific way, or it was,
That
That's,
was one B. That was one B.
that was 1B. Which is okay, I mean, because if 1B is
That does capture
our growth area, yeah, that's fine. Right, if we're saying that's
Right.
1B, that's okay, and we can make sure the definition here matches that Richford example.
What I think.
Tier 2 is everything else, and I
but
have no
tier
idea.
2, to your point, is about 2/3 of the state.
Right,
And
And I think Anne's concern is the good one, we don't want unintended consequences.
yeah.
Greenlighting something that isn't an interim measure
right.
or,
But as you raise, everything being in the floodplain, people high and dry on the hill doesn't sound so bad to me right now. I mean, if they were right in downtown Gary, they'd have a problem, I mean, we have to start looking a little bit outside of
But
where we've clustered, which is the flood corridor.
I think we do, but those are our horizontal ghettos. There's two major places in Barry. They're nice developments, but they're all up on the hill.
right,
So you don't
And we-
have access
we
to
drive
the
down through them.
grocery store yes, if you go up the back way. And especially for seniors,
Uh-huh.
I just don't think we can just focus on those two and not say we can't put workforce housing in. I think towns are still operating under a planning zoning.
Mhm. Yeah,
but we wish they all.
which would speak to 30 by 2, anywhere that's not a protected area. 30 by 2 lets them make a lot of choices.
I don't mind 30 by 2. It's saying
She's,
if you don't have planning and zoning, you can put in 30 by 2 senior or low income housing, basically.
So are you saying,
qualified.
so are you saying where there's no zoning, you don't want any Act 250 exemptions, or? I mean, because those did have 10 by 5 by 2, which that is the conversation on the table. I think 10 by 5 by 2 creates sprawl and isn't gonna get you senior or workforce housing.
Okay, all I know is when I got called into the planning commission in Barry City Town, which is up in the hill, it is the growth area.
Yeah.
Barry City doesn't have any room to grow. Their example was Williamstown, has no planning, no zoning, it's not the towns that are stopping it. They also have almost no new housing because of the threat of Act 250 is what that planning.
So what kind of housing do you want Williamstown to have? That has no place?
But right now, it's a rural town, it's not that rural because it's got a road into Barry and up to the hospital. I think it could use some workforce housing.
Okay,
It could use, it has, the Gardens is in Williamstown. It has senior housing. It is an old house that's been converted. A lot of people go there because it's cheaper than some of the other places. But there isn't much in downtown Williamstown in the way of
services.
services.
Mhm.
You have, the grocery store is maybe a quarter mile out of town.
Mhm.
It-
But people from Williamstown might still wanna live there.
Yes.
You know, I mean,
So.
might wanna stay near their family.
It's Barry that's going there. I think they're doing well. What they could use is I think they'd be happy with the 10 by 2 to get. I don't know that they have room for 30 units.
You
that
don't
they want
have to build 30, you could just
How
build
big is the
15.
garden?
it's an old house.
It's just not it's a converted
It's
house.
a
okay.
converted house. It's not, I think there's an extension on the back.
Which
Uh,
is perfect, infill, that,
It
that's
is.
way better.
it is perfect infill, but that's the only big house downtown to convert.
Yeah.
No, the Gary home, which was actually built when the original, and I can tell you the whole story about the first woman doctor who ran away from the farm and went to Boston. Became the first woman doctor from Vermont, endowed that with a sewing seamstress who was a single lady who started saying there should be a place for a woman like me to retire to.
Was Laura Plant her name? Cause we have, I thought we have first doctor, sorry.
No, this was, her name was Gary. This was,
Okay,
it's
this
the
was,
Gary
We'll talk after.
and she was a doctor in Massachusetts,
Okay,
but she ran away, she and her brother ran away.
She
from
couldn't have
the farm.
afforded to endow anything.
Interesting.
For doctors.
Yes, but anyway, the Gary home was a home. It, they eventually, I think it burned, and they rebuilt as close as they could with what's down there now, and now there's a whole members unit being infilled in the backyard. So it's, you're
Right,
perfect.
that's good.
there.
So Williamstown could say, for Williamstown, 30 units is too much. But another,
Town might.
you know, another town could say, you know, we need 28 units because we're the hub for half the kingdom.
Right.
Right, but
And so,
don't limit them to senior and affordable housing.
so her issue is the category, I think,
Oh, yes.
is the
Okay,
limit to
you're going to
affordable
let
to
them
senior.
build certain amount of housing.
Right.
If they don't have planning and zoning and they don't have city water.
Right,
and sewer,
right.
Just say you can build
I think that's,
10 units of whatever.
or, I actually would, I mean, I think that those could be up to 30, you know, they aren't gonna necessarily take up to 30, but I think what you're saying is you'd like to see it for workforce and affordable workforce mixed housing, not identified strictly for
I
seniors.
do wanna say that the perpetually affordable is workforce housing, so we
Right.
could just say perpetually affordable, and that usually captures senior housing.
You have to allow a mix of people to live in the town, otherwise you create a poor old ghetto.
Right. So do you wanna just say 30 by 2 and the town still can say, that's way outsized for us?
They can choose what they
They can
want.
choose
Told
what
them
they
they
want.
could do 20. Just whatever you do, don't limit it to
Okay.
low income
Heard.
and senior housing.
From what I've heard, things that are concerned with micromanagement, by people in this room, we're judging what to put in any town in Vermont based on what's happened in Williamstown, what's happened in Woodstock. Micromanagement is perhaps what's got us where we are right now, trying to straighten this mess out.
Right.
Thank you.
Second, is anybody gonna understand what we're doing here?
Yes.
Is anybody gonna understand this whole process? I don't understand it fully. And I've been sitting here listening to it.
I hear you. We are, if we don't do something, a lot will fall under Act 250 as it has been. And
The broad.
We won't have
what I'm
housing.
focused on is broadest relaxation
okay,
of grips on
yes.
things that are impeding development.
So that would say 30 by 2, anywhere that's not these really specific designated areas or tier 3, which we're gonna sort of limit the definition, and that's protected land. Anywhere else we have 30 by 2. And it does no specific type of housing. And that leaves it up to the municipality.
That leaves it to the municipality. I'm not sure we're ready to be that wide open. Natural
Well, we can
resources is never gonna
I
buy.
think you could
We
put
could have put it
specific
in the-
constraints
Yes,
that visually or that in words describe places where you can't do something.
Well, but
That's
that's your
That's the-
mapping, but
that-
that's the work our towns are gonna be doing with the mapping. I'm
But
sorry.
it's more than that.
yeah, the first thing the towns have to do is planning and zoning. And a lot of these volunteer boards don't have
The capability.
the capability or the impetus to take on that
They will
much
be
more.
helped by the regional.
Well,
planning commission.
So I think
But
this is gonna,
that should be our first
okay,
goal, not just say, well, we're gonna reward you for not having planning and zoning. Say, you get planning and zoning, And then you can build 30 units.
Okay.
You can say you have plenty of zoning, or you can look at centralized pool of resources to help the smallest towns do the things that they want, without having to put the burden on creative bureaucracy to do it.
Okay, I hear everybody. I think this is an important conversation, but I think it is one that we can keep noodling with our stakeholders in a conversation sort of outside the room. I don't think anyone's disagreeing. We're just having a hard time visualizing exactly what we're talking about.
We are, and at the same time, when we talk about our stakeholders are the public who need housing. Our stakeholders aren't all the three-letter organizations that have their own vested interest in doing certain things.
What I'm not hearing though in this conversation is new proposals being put on the table.
Well,
That's
proposal one is
satisfying.
a pooled set of resources to be able to provide things like planning and zoning to the extent necessary, and then maybe in stripped down form to all these rural communities that don't have it.
And you're saying don't give them an Act 250 exemption until they have that.
Until they have the resource available, but understand that getting that resource available is a fire engine project. It's
Well,
not
we
just
are
something we're
putting
gonna
money,
take
we
5
are
years to do.
suggesting to put money into regional municipal plan.
That goes back to our
For that.
PTT proposal, our property transfer tax proposal, that is proposing more resources for our regional planning commissions who are gonna be partnering with
But
them to
again,
do this.
I would certainly like to see in all of this a date certain. It's not that
Okay.
when we get it
Okay.
done, and we'll get it done
Sure.
5 years from now.
Sure,
Correct.
that is
This has
also,
got, this
Mhm.
speed is perhaps the one thing that
right,
we can control through this process. We may not control the building that we like or the place that we like,
Mhm.
control it, we can
We can
control
put
it.
a
but I
flyer.
just, let's like get really concrete while we have Ellen in the chair. You're saying set a deadline.
Rest.
And until that deadline, give more money and support for planning and zoning in areas that don't have it. But until then, they don't have an Act 250 exemption. But areas outside of these really poor developed areas that do have planning and zoning get a 30x2 exemption until.
The
This is
question
what-
is, what can we do to ensure that that a deadline, if we set a deadline, is in fact met?
Okay, we could get to
Yeah, you're
that.
going to have to.
I'm big into the
provide
deadline.
it.
Yes,
We have
we're
to
into the
keep
deadline.
They're
You're going to
totally
have
funded
to
in
apply
there.
it.
And there's a debate that I'm on the side of saying, once those maps are done through the NRB, they can't be appealed. That's a live conversation between all the committees as well. So I hear exactly what you're saying, but before getting to the next part of the process, is everyone saying 30x2 where there's planning and zoning outside of these core
It's
areas
fun.
and no exemption where there's not, or we could do 10x2.
I was gonna say. I
Keep
would-
current law, I mean.
Yeah,
for-
Okay.
And we say planning and zoning, I think what's gonna happen in the tier 2 areas, they'll have planning. Almost determined for them if they don't do it, but they're still not gonna have zoning, they're not gonna have bylaws.
So-
So that's different.
So
Well, okay,
why,
so we're talking about zoning bylaws.
so we're talking about
Specific.
asking towns if they wanted to, yeah, I think we want
Yeah,
to
say
put
they
have to
any
apply.
pressure
I think
on
30 by
planning
2.
and bu-
30x2 with no zoning, to me, is just foolish.
Well, it was limited to certain types of housing, but
Yeah, but
you're saying,
I
so
just,
I
have a
agree.
do you
lot
wanna
of
say 10x2?
I don't wanna say any
10
number
by
right
2
now.
is the status quo, except
Yeah,
with the 5.
Yeah, so then what happens is Act 250 becomes the resource to help you plan it. I mean, that really is how it's
Yeah.
supposed to work. But the NRB is the resource.
So the question on the table is 10x2 in those areas or nothing?
10x2. I mean, if
So
I have to
current
say
law,
a
you're
number
talking-
now,
Yeah.
like existing.
In the interim period,
Yeah,
current law
yes,
for areas without zoning or.
yes.
Well, I will say, I'm still proposing striking the 5 miles because I think that creates sprawl.
I agree.
Yeah,
Oh,
I would,
Yeah.
Can I weigh in on that?
Yes.
So I'm a little bit concerned about that. I just want to pose that if there is no radius trigger,
Mhm.
this reads that a person constructing housing units within any period of 2 years, more than that set number of units triggers Act 250.
In the areas without zoning.
anywhere in the
No.
state.
Oh, because it's not, yeah, because there's not a geographical component.
But, okay, but I'm sorry, I'm
one
like, I'm
person-
layering this on top of our
So
conversation.
if if the only trigger is 2 years and not geographically, they can only have that project in 2 years before they trigger Act 250.
I'm not following. What does the
Eight-
5 miles do then?
They could go farther outside of the 5 miles
Uh-huh.
and start again before they trigger.
So you
Act
can say
250.
20 miles. And then you wouldn't get sprawl. But it's weird. This is
So
why
does the
it's
30 by 2 also mean they can only do 30 units?
Yeah.
They can't build anything else?
Yeah, that is how I read it. I don't know who proposed that language, but that's a concern I have. I think it's doing the opposite of what you're intending.
Our intention is to reduce sprawl. And to
Oh, well, then
increase.
maybe it will do that, but it will limit it.
Can we
Not the
say-
80%.
Can we say 30 by 2 and 10 by 2 within a municipality?
Well, everything's in a municipality.
No, I mean, like, they can do the
Within
same thing in another
within
municipality.
municipality.
Can I
Yeah.
just, I really.
The mileage thing strikes
But
me
if we
as odd.
focus on designated areas and making those areas more logical, which is what we're doing elsewhere,
Mhm.
then you know where you're gonna get development. It's not a mystery. It's not a hopscotch.
That's what leaves the rural areas
No,
out.
because we're increasing their designated areas, I thought.
Their designated areas are still very small.
But
But we're
that's
also
the
proposing
interim.
a ring around. One of the
Yeah.
proposals in here is to create. for
The
interim
proposal is for
period,
a quarter mile around the village centers.
No,
half a mile, if it's half a mile.
Well,
it's not in your language currently.
I know, but the
Oh.
proposal that is being discussed
Would be a quarter of a
broadly
mile
is a
around.
quarter of a mile.
Okay, so for the interim period, we're gonna have a quarter of a mile proposal around the centers. I would suggest that until,
Half a mile in the bigger centers.
I would propose that until we have a date certain and toes to the fire on doing the mapping, we have to let our towns do this mapping work. We, I think we should not be changing anything else until we have that work. And to put more toes fire, sorry. We could, I've just lost my thought. I mean, I had I think
An
that we
incentive?
should not be changing any law
The
until.
you want the status.
I think we should just keep the status quo until they have done that work and put our effort into getting them to get that work done.
Provided there's a way to ensure that we expedite, so I don't know if there's such a thing as a zoning package. For example.
We can set deadlines.
Yeah, and so.
I think we have
But
to.
the point in all of this is, for all on one hand, when you're talking about doing something on an interim basis, where we got all the issues that we have regarding the workforce to build and the money to build and the labor and so on, if there's a little bit of sprawl, I'm not that excited about it, quite frankly, on an interim basis, because we have to give people a place to live now, not 5 years or 10 years from now.
So you're saying you're okay with the.
I'm okay with it.
So but we'll also.
I would
I
call
need-
sprawl.
People
I'm
need
not
a
okay with
place to
sprawl.
Yeah.
live, and they don't have a place to
Right.
live.
This is
So do they
local
live in a
control.
tent until we get all the
Right.
paperwork done?
Right.
And I think that's absurd.
Or we can't get teachers, or we can't get nurses, and we can't get people we need to live a human life.
I think we should work to visualize this.
And we can't
And we-
micromanage by visualizing it though, which is that what I'm hearing, some of the tendency that we have here of trying to micromanage everything. It's not working.
We're not micromanaging. We are, in fact, have come up with a process to let the towns do the work they need to do,
Let's let
visualizing their
them
future.
do it.
And
Then let's let them do it.
agree.
And again, there will be mistakes made, I know. You could try to put some words around controls of the horrible things that you don't want to have done in a narrative way, so you have some guidance. But at the same time, we gotta get out of the way.
So are you supporting 30 by 2 and 10 by 2 in a municipality?
I would support that.
Okay.
Probably would
With
support more than
zoning, I mean, every place.
30 by 2 with zoning, 10 by 2
Without.
without zoning
And
within a
that's-
But
municipality.
with zoning,
interim.
Petty, everything's
That's
gotta have
interim.
zoning.
That's
and-
current law. Current law
Kinda.
is 10 by 2.
So, bye, 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 bye.
10 by 5.
I think we're
I would
dealing in
agree.
this with just houses,
Yes.
okay? We have all kinds of issues with public safety fire, police, ambulance.
Mhm.
We're gonna need to go to a regional system.
We're working on that.
I-
We're working on that
I-
in Seneca Valley.
Yeah.
There's a, I'm sitting here, I've got Barry Montpelier, that should be a growth area. You've got Burlington, South Burlington, Winooski, Essex. But what we've done is we've set up. Each town has veto power, which may not fit into what the region wants. If we've got sprawl, it's between Barry and Montpelier. I think we should probably be trying to get housing in that area. I don't know if
So you're
that's
transit
Okay.
workers.
What I do wanna say, Anne, though, is when you talk about public safety, our rural towns are saying, we can't hire a police officer,
No,
we
they
can't
can't.
hire a firefighter, you know, or
We let
whatever.
our police and firefighters move out of Montpelier because they couldn't afford to live here 30 years ago.
Right, so look at Moortown, we're talking about the librarian and the postal worker are living in squalor because they don't have anywhere else to live.
Right.
So
And the
we,
town won't
And
enforce
because
it.
we aren't enforcing.
We are.
I would like to go around and see if people are okay with 30x2 where there's zoning and 10x2 where there's no zoning for anything. Anne, are you, is that a yes? Alice, and this is within a municipality, so we don't run into the, they can't build anything anywhere else. Allison,
Which addresses the mileage issue,
yes.
maybe.
What did you say?
Sorry, Virginia.
About.
So
losing
her
housing.
proposal,
Yes, within a municipality.
Okay, sure.
Keisha's proposing,
So they would only be within one town. They could construct up to either 30 or 10 units.
Yes,
Within 2 years,
30 units.
without triggering Act 250.
yes,
They could go to another town
yes,
and do that.
yes.
Which could be quite close, actually.
Or if you have two towns make an agreement.
That would be needed.
Well, I mean, I know what I'm saying is I think
Years to
places
build
like
30
Rochester
units
have-
of housing.
The trigger of that, when the project's complete, by the way, would be when the application is filed.
So
So, and-
that's it. I can't see you getting up 30 units of housing in less than 2 years.
What you look like,
Sorry, Megan Sullivan, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Vermont Chamber. I'm just thinking of some of our larger communities that have been doing a lot of housing. Like South Burlington. Would one developer there, like a Summit Properties, be limited to 30? Or is the priority housing project staying in effect until?
I think most of South Burlington would be municipal water and sewer or within a larger growth area that would get them either full exemption or 75 units in the ring
Oh,
around.
sorry.
No, that's okay.
No, that's important.
Yeah.
So this is
Yeah.
the base underlying, and then there's stuff on top of this in town, in other
In the
towns.
growth,
When
like,
it gets
yeah.
more, actually not more restricted, less restricted.
Yes, Lester,
We're
Going
we're
up.
talking tier 2 mostly.
yes, we're talking about our rural.
That
areas,
is what's
basically.
concerning, so that's why I think we have to be really super thoughtful, because these are our tier 2. So your proposal for tier 2
Yeah,
is,
this is my proposal for the interim.
For the interest,
for the interim, is
Mhm.
75.
No. My proposal for the interim, we're talking about the other areas outside of the growth center.
Okay, so you're talking about for the interim, 30x2
In a municipality.
in a municipality served by water and sewer.
No,
And it
with
has
zoning.
in place.
Not served by water and sewer with zoning,
With zoning.
yes,
And
10x2 in a municipality that does
Without.
not have them.
with that, I could live with that for the interim.
But without the actual map, I have no idea.
We'll get the
Montpelier Valley,
we'll
growth
get
areas.
of that.
What's East Montpelier, what's Plainfield, Marshfield, Habit? Are they all,
Do they have a village center?
I don't know if they have a designated one, but they all definitely have one.
We will get you a map of Washington County. I promise with this
That
proposal.
would be good.
I just wanna see what people want to look at.
So we're looking
So
at,
for the interim,
Yeah,
everywhere with zoning, which presumably also means bylaws.
Yeah.
zoning and.
30 by 2.
Zoning and subdivision bylaw.
Yes, 30 by 2. for the interim, I think that would be fine.
And 10 by 2.
Within a municipality.
Within a municipality, a single municipality, and then 10 by 2 within a single municipality without zoning.
Without-
So they would have the help of the NRP if they wanted to go over 10.
Yes.
And this is only for the interim
Help
period.
it. Yes.
I mean, we have to, it's not always a bad thing.
No,
There are
no,
good
it's
things
not.
about
I
Active
like the
50.
refrain.
There are a
Yeah,
lot
no,
of good things.
I like it too, it's.
There are
very-
lots of good things about activity.
Right.
Right.
And at what point do we wanna have the conversation about the other interim measures about the quarter mile?
But we will have that conversation, but let's stay here.
Yes,
Okay, I think I'm fine with that.
that's fine, and the designated areas are really important to discuss.
They are. We need their.
Because we might want even more in the designated
I
areas.
totally agree. I think there's a little bit of problem with the definition around all of these tiers. So, but we're now, if we just say in our minds, we're talking about the really
Yeah.
big growth areas over here, the protected areas over here, everything in the middle.
Which is,
It's either 30 by 2 or 10 by 2. Sabina.
I was gonna look up how many blocks are in a quarter mile. But I mean, a quarter mile is 4 or 5 blocks. So I mean, if you think about that, I mean, that's not a bad size to start.
What
Miles, right.
I'm hearing
Yeah,
from the
but-
ether is village centers in a quarter mile around.
correct.
And the bigger growth centers half a mile around.
Right.
That helps the Burlingtons, the South Burlingtons, the.
With some language that makes it logical,
And-
like if there's something in the quarter mile that, where it shouldn't be,
Sure.
we
You
talked about
gotta
that,
be
but,
able to.
yeah, that's easy.
There's a mountain
And I
here,
think
so
the
you got a half
communities-
a mile going down the valley.
Right,
Yeah.
but again, this is where municipalities are in the driver's seat.
Right.
They know, what, it makes sense or doesn't make sense.
Okay, dates are gonna be critically important here.
Okay, we have work on dates. Charlie Baker, just to be specific. I don't wanna name too many people because everybody's really stretched to find it.
I was just gonna add, Madam Chair, that I would agree that there is some confusion in the tier 1B, particularly the tier 2, because Richford is a rural
Tier 2.
community, but it's technically a tier 1B, but the idea is that there is room for communities of all, the 1B was meant to say that there's room for communities of all sizes to be able to have these
Right.
exemptions, if you will, so.
Yes,
That,
Yes.
it's a little.
we like that, but we need to know what gives them
The
that
tier 1, the tier
threshold.
1B
Yeah.
and 2 gets confused.
It
to
does,
your
thank you
point.
for saying that. I didn't wanna, I'm not trying to malign anybody, but.
And I'm just
Yeah.
defending myself for being
Right.
wrong before.
Well, and I still hold the philosophy that it would be good to set very specific interim exemptions and be a little more flexible about how you all give guidance to the communities and they work with their RPCs. If we're too prescriptive in 4 months, we're creating, I think, more problems when this is at least a 2-year process. So
At least.
that is why we are having so many arguments about the interim exceptions. We're the only ones doing this.
Doing interim?
We have to come up.
I don't,
Not-
who else
Well,
has interim?
sorry, please continue.
Yeah, does another committee have interim exemptions?
I think that the other committees I am working on are working on changing all the jurisdictional triggers
What is
to
that?
some extent. So
I don't see that
okay,
I don't know what that
jiving with
means.
people's understanding. Because what I keep hearing is they think it's not gonna take very long to do the mapping, and I
I
can't
think
see that being the case.
if we're really gonna
Doing the
honor
mapping or getting the towns to accept the mapping.
both of
That
them,
too, I mean,
That's
just
gonna be a
having the
long
tiers done
Yeah.
and being ready to dig holes and, that, I don't see anyone else saying we have to do really specific things in the interim to let development happen.
I think we have to do things in the interim to let some things happen. So you're going around the table, I am fine with it's sort of my concept of tier 2, this interim measure, 30 by 2 with zoning and bylaws, 10 by 2 without zoning.
Okay.
I'm fine with that. You're next.
As long as we designate the entire state a designated area, I'll go along with the website. That's possible.
I appreciate the little bit of humor.
Fine.
We're lawmakers. That's what we do.
This is our job.
Anybody else? Ellen, do you feel like you have what you need? Sabina, can you help with drafting this.
Or Pete.
I'm
I
ready to.
personally cannot.
Okay,
But Pete can,
Pete,
he's a lawyer.
okay.
Yeah. So I just don't know how that measures the 75 units, and I don't know if you want to go back.
Well,
to
that's
that.
exactly what I think.
So
We're having a hard
75
time with
is based on
1B.
population, isn't it? Over,
Oh, are
Yeah.
you're talking piece?
No,
no, okay,
Because that's where the population.
population.
no, what I'm
Yeah.
talking about is 1B.
Yeah.
And what 1B meant to me was transit corridors and, you know, areas that have municipal water and sewer that don't fall into the designated areas.
Oh,
Because we don't have a definition of 1B that I understand. What is your current definition of 1B?
1B, I mean, very general. Conceptually, 1Bs have wastewater and or the capacity of the land to be able to take it in. They have water infrastructure, they have zoning and subdivision bylaws, but they don't have the administrative capacity to quite be a 1A area.
So you see 1A as a very big area that covers most municipal water and sewer and growth areas.
Geographically, I don't know how big that would be exactly, but
But that's the definition,
yeah,
covered by.
yes,
Water and
1A
sewer.
would have, yeah, it's
And
much
zoning.
more robust, yeah.
So what would Route 7 be between Burlington and Shelburne?
It's that transition zone that we talked about. Yeah,
pizza.
Still ready.
That's my problem.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think that's.
Yeah.
One very Montpelier Road.
Yeah, I
you
feel
know.
like that's
Yeah.
infill and 1B, I mean.
Well, 1A, 1B is my problem. You know,
Well-
like, is it 1A or is it 1B?
Yeah, I think.
I don't know what
They
the,
both have
I don't, yeah, they both
Yeah.
have zoning. I don't know what the water and the sewer situation is for those areas. It would, you know, based on that, again, very broad brush definition,
Yeah.
it would depend on what their wastewater and water systems are in that area. And I just don't know that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I hear 1B again, please? Yeah.
1B is, so you have zoning and subdivision bylaws, you have water supply.
I thought you said wastewater.
So I'll start with the water supply. So you have water supply and you have either wastewater or land capacity to allow for waste disposal in that.
So you could have big septic systems.
Okay.
Yes,
One Colchester, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, there was another town example too, Bristol, I think maybe came
If
up.
you
right
have
when
the
we studied
threshold in
Waterbury is a
1B
good
at
example.
50
The
units.
Waterbury.
You have the threshold in 1B at 50
Zoning
units.
goes and not staff.
A threshold of
Yeah.
units, did you say?
Yeah.
Yes, so one, yes.
They don't,
1B, under the study was, the trigger would be 50 units as
So-
housing.
I'm proposing to
Otherwise,
take that up to
we-
75 units of housing.
Just despite population, because right now it's based on population.
So you could do.
Well, that was the
more.
PHP,
Yeah,
I remember seeing that, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You took me, I got distracted, I distracted myself with PHP language, yeah, sorry.
It says 30 at the moment, but Keisha's proposal is 75.
1B says 50.
I'm having a hard time with two. I'm defining 1B and 2 with zoning. I'm trying to define those and I'm still struggling honestly, and we need help with that.
We need help with.
If we don't understand it, how are the towns going to understand it?
Right,
We
well, we're
need
not
to
done
make
yet.
that.
Yeah, we need
Yeah.
to.
But we need
clarity
also,
at the end.
yeah, and we can build that 30 over time, but we need interim exemptions.
Yeah.
That get at.
Yeah.
You know, urban, suburban, and then rural. And in rural, I'm seeing 30 by 2 or 10 by 2 depending, but suburban right now, which is very Montpelier Road, it's Route 7 in certain places, you know, in my mind should be up to 75 units. So we have a lot of places, up Harbor View, I mean, a lot of housing that has the capacity for more than 50 units in those areas. Especially if we're protecting a lot of other areas.
So
Half of the Barry Montpelier Road, we have found out, is floodplain.
So we're leaving that,
It's
yeah.
pretty
So that would
steep
happen.
hills.
Yeah.
yes, 15% slope, sure.
Yeah, I mean,
In my mind,
That's
all
all
the
the
more
more
reason to build where we know it's safe more because we're not gonna get the units we need in really core downtowns that have floodplain.
Correct.
So our people would, when we identify what we mean by developed but not core, designated areas. Versus
Yeah.
rural and 30 by 2, are people okay with 75 units?
I'm fine, although didn't we allow for more units with more population in those two differences with the priority housing projects?
So for that example, was Middlebury was locked, they were able to do that project because population and the cap left, and they're gonna have 200 units that they've already started construction on.
But they would, under this proposal, be fully exempt in downtown Middlebury.
Wouldn't that be 1A? That
They would be in
1A.
1A now.
That's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to get away from are the population thresholds, because we had to lift the caps, because Middlebury's at 900 something instead of 10,000. And then they would have had an increased cap. That was their problem. So I don't like the population
Yeah, no.
thresholds, because I think it adds a whole nother layer that we should stop. considering.
Well, staff capacity is a better measurement than population. I think population was being used as a proxy
Yeah.
for
Right, that's true. Yeah.
capability.
So I'm not hearing opposition to this.
To
This is your-
75,
This is your idea for 1B.
Yes.
so it's been determined that 1B, that the staff doesn't have capacity. So I have concerns about that.
They have moderate capacity, and what I'm hearing is there was some forethought about 50 and 75 and blah, 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 depending on your population size. But
Well,
that, I think that
75
should go
seems
away.
like a lot to me for someone to do without guidance, because
These are suburban areas that are probably part of communities that have a core downtown, where we're giving them a full
That's
exemption.
fine, but we're not saying that they may have no one to help them do it, like get through the process, get permits. I mean, you're saying 75 without, except for the A&R permits and those
If
kinds
you
of
wanna help me define robust planning,
Yeah,
that's
Well,
fine.
they're working on it.
Yeah, so I'm saying in areas where there's robust planning,
Yes.
these are transit corridors,
Yes.
these are,
So that should be a 1A if there's.
No,
then I don't know what 1B is, and that's.
I think 1B
Vegas.
is towns that have planners and have
Right.
enough staff to make this possible.
I heard
They're not.
during the steering committee conversations, one example we used was Waterbury. Downtown Waterbury would be a 1A
Mhm.
because they have all the infrastructure.
Right.
And
Waterbury Center, so things up by like the cider mill area, that would be a 1B. And then a lot of the rest of Waterbury would be a tier 2, and I don't know about tier 3 because I'm
Right.
as familiar with those. So you would have a 1A and a 1B where you'd say this 1A full exemption, go forth and build homes for everybody. 1B, build homes and commercial and industrial and make this a real community where people can walk to work. 1B, go forth and build homes. There was conversations of whether it's unlimited or 50. We eventually landed on 50. But then outside of that would be the tier.
so, but Waterbury is served by a planner, zoning people, it has a robust,
Right.
so there is within one town,
Right.
2 different types of zones.
Right, they could say, we need to pull all these people out of the floodplain,
But they have to tap
and
into
let's
that.
move them somewhere with more than 50 units.
So
Well, I think
that's different than what Pete said about 1B.
So 1B,
So we're talking about two different things. So we're talking about staff capacity, but then what Megan said was more of a zoning differential where you don't want it to be as dense. So that's a different
Of its own.
component.
I'm just gonna say, we need
Which
to,
is-
we need to define our interim exemptions. And Godspeed on the tiers right now, in their final form. But we need to define these exemptions without the tiers in place.
Okay.
So we could use some help doing that so that it gives us experimental approximation to what the tiers will ultimately be, and we can decide, oh, that was too restrictive or that was too loose. But we need to set the tiers aside for a second and decide what happens in between and what that defined area is. We're still struggling with that.
Yes.
But if people think, if we're talking about the suburban growth ring around core areas being 75 instead of 50, that's what I'm proposing, because I think 50 is pretty restrictive in some of these areas between our growth centers. And again, the municipality can say 75 is way too much for a small,
Depends on the community.
Yeah.
Right.
but Chittenden County could say 75 is good, we need 75 units of senior housing on Route 7.
And what these thresholds, it doesn't mean you can't build 75, it just means it kicks you into Act 250.
Exactly,
And Act 250, we're trying to make it easier too and quicker.
Yes.
I mean, we've reduced what you can appeal for.
So,
We're hopefully putting in another judge, so the appeal will go faster.
Sure,
So,
but we're only reducing what you can appeal for right now in the final tier. So
No,
this
no,
is interim.
no, we reduced it last year. When we took away some of the, reasons that.
A few, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the ones
We made
that
by right.
the folks told us were the most important. So this is a big deal, you know, what happens interim. So I
And again,
have
it's up to
concerns with
75.
75 units. Like connecting towns. I think that's.
I don't wanna focus on the definition right now, but if we kind of know what we're talking
For
about,
the place, like,
right?
um,
So let's talk about your road.
let's talk
What's
about
your
your
road?
road.
What's your, what's your road out of
Putney
Putney
Road?
Road?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
a
that's
lot
the
of-
one that needs to be redeveloped. That's why I love the idea.
Would
of
you be
letting-
okay with up to
Except for
75 units?
Were you saying Route 5?
Yes,
Okay,
Thank you.
I'd like to talk to them about it.
okay. That's why I'm putting it on the table.
Right.
Is so people can
Right.
visualize the areas where
Right,
75 units between now and when we finish the tiers would be helpful.
and when you say 75 units per what, you know, per development, we're saying. I wouldn't want 75 units, unless there was good density, actually.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. The municipality can determine this. But we're talking about 50 units with some density or 75 units with some density.
Right, but again, it's hard to have one number for the entire state, and I would like to, I think this should be left to the municipalities. And if necessary, to the
Right.
regional.
And that 75 units would do that, but it would acknowledge really developed areas that could go up to 75 units and it wouldn't look out of character. And other places that you'd say the municipality would say, you know what, we're not gonna go 40 units, but the
Right.
up to gives some more room for growth for housing, pulling people out of other places and getting scale,
Right.
getting
And their zoning already limits what can be done and the density of what can be done.
but they don't get kicked into Act 250, which is exactly what Zeke dealt with.
Oh, I
saying this
understand.
threshold
Right,
of 100, basically, in his community, is really low for this exciting project we wanna do. And it would have taken 1 or 2 extra years for them to do it if we didn't change
no,
the
I
threshold.
understand. I think what we ought to do is have a proposal that is of the interim, you know, for the
Mhm.
interim,
Yeah.
and be very clear on what we're talking about. Because
That's what I
obviously,
like.
we have different things in our heads.
Yeah,
I guess just one thing I want to say is I would rather have multiple 30 unit developments just because it wouldn't be such a big chunk controlled and suburban looking. It might not be suburban looking. And I'm a fan of infill. And infill typically doesn't come in 75 unit quantities.
It
Does
could, infill in Woodstock could have been up to 80 units. So, I mean, there are
Okay,
infill
okay, so
spots.
and again, municipalities would say 30 is our
That's
scale,
not
you know?
infill, that's out the
Well,
road where
it's-
the high school is, that's not downtown infill.
I love that.
Okay,
Please don't micromanage. Please.
we are switching to municipal folks, which is appropriate.
Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Hi,
Are you from Montpelier?
I am.
Okay, great. Well, we still have 2 minutes if anybody.
We didn't get very far.
You know, but this conversation will consume the session, so it's not inappropriate. But I do need folks this weekend to really think about language that they want. Or, hold your peace next week because, I need proposals on the table. And we have a ring of stakeholders who want to be helpful to us. But we need to get extremely specific about the interim exemptions that we're talking about.
And I think it is good for us to focus on that.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't want something to happen in the interim that when you get to the root maps, you say, oh, that shouldn't have happened. This should allow things to go. I'm having a really difficult time trying to plan not having the map. If I had the map,
Right.
I could,
We are working on that.
yeah, I could visualize.
I hope Alex heard that and GIS folks, we need mapping capacity.
We need to visualize.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference between zones in Montpelier and Barry and the same zones when you get up to Island Pond,
Mhm.
which is an Italian,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, a quarter mile is
Right,
half of it's through the lake.
right, which
Yeah,
they'll take that into account.
yeah,
Yeah.
you need to be able to swing it the other way
Right.
to.
It's a good point. And again, this is going to be a conversation the entire session. So let's figure out the tools we need to have the conversation, and I totally hear you and agree. I can't imagine what it's like to be Ellen right now.
She's getting a nice relaxing.
Right,
time. Sit
so
here.
if people get concerned about hearing me say the stakeholders, the intent here is to relieve some pressure from Ellen, who is ping-ponging, like the stakeholders are around 3 committees, but these are some of our only lawyers who can write statutory language and get us help to be more specific, without putting Ellen in the middle all the time. I think it would be good if you came back. I think we can let John go for the next time we have this. And we should talk about municipal, and we can have a broad conversation after we've talked to some municipal planners. Thank you, Ellen. Sorry, I forget your. Is it Mike? Okay. Chip and Mike, do either of you have a more defined?
I think Chip does.
Chip does? Okay, thank you, Mike. Chip, we'll start with you. And I think you sent the whole committee recommendations that are on our website now. Is that right?
Yes. Do you want me to focus on the sections having to do with local zoning?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Ram Hinsdale. Thank you, senators of the committee. I think that one of the undercurrents of my testimony and others in my.
You just have to identify yourself for the record.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot that part. Chip Sawyer, Director of Planning and Development for the City of St. Albans. Been in the position for 12 years. We have an underlying concern that the committee may or may not have an appetite for, but that's, the Home Act S-100 had a transformational effect on local zoning as it pertains to Vermont's housing crisis. It changed some of the fundamental building blocks of zoning, and quite frankly, short-circuited some of the ways in which local rules work and interact with each other, and set us on the course to making sure that our local rules are compliant with the new state statute. It outlawed single-family only residential areas. It doubled in the city of St. Albans. It doubled the allowed number of dwelling units per property in our largest residential zone, which is over half of the city. It
But
quadrupled.
can I ask you a question? Because
Yeah.
I've seen planning maps that show that before that, you had lost 300 to 400 units of housing that were in 2 to 4 unit areas. Does that match with your understanding? You've lost
No.
small multi-unit housing? Because that's what the planners regionally have shown us.
Yeah, and I was part of the construction of that housing needs assessment that used 2000 census data. I presented our own permitting data that refuted those numbers. I forget if there was a loss or a gain, but the number was not that high for that type of housing units in 2 to 4 family structures. Furthermore,
But there might have been a loss.
huh?
There might have been a loss of housing in those areas.
There might have been a loss of housing in that type of construction, but there might have been a gain in housing of 5 or more units, or a gain in housing in duplexes. There was certainly over the course of we had the largest amount of missing middle and single family home permits come through our office, having a lot to do, coinciding with the pandemic. And in many ways not counted by the Census Bureau, because the Census Bureau is a point in time count on April 1st, when much of what was coming into our office happened after that date. Yeah, so I'm glad you made that point, because that census data for the city of St. Albans, quite frankly, I think is wrong. And also doesn't reflect the fact that we had actually demolished 23 multifamily apartments right before the census count was taken, and then partnered with developers to build 63 new multifamily apartments on one site after the census was taken. So
On the same site?
On the same
Yes.
site. So changes like that aren't taken into account. I mean, the census data, of course, is important, and we use it, and everyone should use it, but it should be recognized that we are not allowed to help them make their counts. We're not allowed to help them make sure that they counted everything. And it is a count of pretty much, it's supposed to be one day, April 1st, 2020, that the count is for. So anything that happens after that, any gains we've made aren't going to be reflected in that number. And quite frankly, in the city of St. Albans, we made a lot of gains in housing in the latter half of 2020 and into 2021. And there are more multifamily housing units being built in the city as we speak. And we're working on building, partnering with developers to build 200 more housing units in the next 5 years.
Okay, I'm sorry I interrupted. We should give you another 5 minutes to talk about your recommendations, since we
Thank
have
you.
about 50 total. Yeah.
My point is the Home Act was transformational. It's very important. It set communities onto doing the important work. And it created a lot of important floors, densities we can't go under, things that we have to permit now. And I think it's going to have a big effect. I just ask that we be given a little bit more time to adjust to transformational legislation like the Home Act before we start having to anticipate more transformational zoning mandates coming out of state legislation. But barring that, and knowing that great action is required, I have also made some suggestions for some of the language in the bill, if it is going to stay in the bill. I'm sorry?
I just said thank you. We appreciate your.
Yeah.
Because some of it is moving forward.
Right. Yeah, I know. Sometimes it's a freight train, and we're all on board now, right?
Yeah.
I'm digesting draft 8.1 right now. My comments have to do with 7.2 on the number of people required to make an appeal. I think the 10% rule is an impossible scenario, especially in larger communities. My suggested language was to stick with the 10 people or 1% of the latest decennial census number, whichever is larger, with recognition, so that in my community, that would mean you need around 68 people to appeal a project. And that's more than twice what you need to get signatures to run for city council in our community. And even that number still might be problematic in cities like Burlington, where it would mean you would need 400 signatures. So I don't know if you, I haven't read through.
Yeah, we're looking at something in
Yeah,
between,
okay.
so.
I think you're, okay, I think you're on top of that one. Section 12, I just hope you would read through the language about what types of projects can't be appealed, because I think it's written ambiguously enough that you also can't appeal a denial of those types of projects, which I think the goal of this bill would be that if a DRB for some reason denies one of these types of housing projects, that the applicant or other local groups would be able to say, whoa, hold on, no, approve it. This is why we're appealing your decision. So if you want to.
Can you say which section might have to get?
12. I
Section
think you
12.
said section 12, is that right, Chip?
Yeah, section 12, or it was in 7.2, in draft 7.2.
It's on page 11
Appeals
of
of
7.2. Sorry, it's on page 11 of 7.2,
Mhm.
and it's the appeals of decisions of the administrative officer. Right?
Mhm.
Let me find it.
We had changed that.
Well, it's appeals the other way. We weren't thinking
Yeah.
about that.
It's
Thank you.
appeals the
Yeah,
other
yeah.
way.
Yeah.
That I think Chip has raised.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, sorry, I think I'm a little off on the sections between 7.2 and 8.1.
That's okay.
Where-
No, that's fine, yeah,
We've got
it's a good
7.2
point, so I wanted
also.
to make sure I.
Oh, okay, all right.
So your point is we need appeals the other direction.
Yeah, I think you're trying to limit the ability to appeal the approval of certain types of projects. Make sure your language isn't written so that it also says you can't appeal the denial of those types of projects.
Thank you.
Yeah, helpful. Thank you very much.
And other municipal local land use planning folks might have other issues with that, but I don't see any issues with that with our city. We have bigger fish to fry, like tandem parking.
We're hearing a lot about parking, you're not the only one, I think you were the first one, but not the only one.
If you want to allow tandem, look, I know families and I see families in my profession who won't even coordinate their own tandem parking. So tandem parking is a great solution in urban areas, especially for storage of cars that aren't accessed on a daily basis. If you want to require us to allow tandem parking, I put in some language here. Please allow us to count those 2 tandem parking spaces as the parking allotment for 1 dwelling unit, and actually added something that I'm going to send to Magali after this. But please allow a municipality to require that tandem parking spaces aren't shared between different dwelling units, so that
Right,
they don't create a false sense of parking capacity and they don't encourage conflict between tenants.
right, so question, are you saying that are there scenarios in which one dwelling unit would require more than 1 parking spot? And could you foresee allowing that if it's the same family, the same dwelling unit, they can have tandem parking that counts as 2 spots?
Yeah, and mostly if you're applying the new 1.5 parking space requirement and you're rounding up or whatever, I mean, if you apply that 1.5 to 1 dwelling unit, that would be 2 spots. You round up. Yeah. And my response, if you want to allow tandem parking, allow the municipality to say, okay, that you can have that tandem parking, that counts for that dwelling unit. Don't share it with other dwelling units. If you want the other dwelling unit to have tandem parking, then let them have their 2 tandem spaces and do it like that.
That's reasonable. I think everybody's nodding. Right? Yeah.
So let's talk about the F-150 rule. The
That's
park-
right.
Oh, the pickups, yeah, I
I do-
mentioned like 3 times. I was like, what?
So
I do
what
think
section?
so this is section 14 in 7.2.
Right.
So I and many others, and Alex Weinhagen and Julie Beth Hines also sent in great testimony on February 6th. The only allowing us to require no larger than 8 by 16 feet. Now, I understand you're giving us a floor and the developer can choose on their own to make a bigger parking space, and I certainly hope they would, but I would prefer language that allows us to require a parking spot to be 9 feet by 18 feet, which is a standard, allow us to allow parking spots that are smaller for compact car only and similar, but then also allow us to require larger parking spots when ADA accessible spaces are required.
Yeah,
Ah,
that's a good point.
good point, Chip. Thank you. Yes. Larger accessible parking places. And are you sending that language also to Magali so we can get it?
Yeah, I did. And I'm going to send a supplement, something like the not sharing tandem spaces between dwelling units. I forgot that in what I sent. But yeah, that's in the underlying, that's the underlying portions of my big Word document that I send over.
Great, thank you.
Duplex is permitted by right. I just want to put in a plug for conditional use review. I know it has a bad rap in some communities.
So what, just, we're staying on 7.2.
Yeah, section 19, section 19.
Trying to keep us by section so we can follow you in the chair.
Yeah. Duplex is permitted by right. Permitted by right is a very powerful thing in local zoning.
So sorry. Hold on, we're just trying to anchor us here. Section 19 is bottom of page 17. And it goes on to pages 18 and 19, and that's where the new language is, and there are some choices here.
Right.
Right? So Chip, you're feeling
there's one little change about requiring duplexes to be permitted by right wherever single family homes can be located.
right.
That was
And-
last year.
Oh, we did that.
We did,
Well, the word allowed was used in the Home Act. And when you use the word allowed, it means a municipality can choose to treat it as permitted by right or require conditional use review before like a
Right.
DRB.
On line 8, on page 18, was duplexes shall be allowed. And now there's a change to a permitted use.
Right.
Is that what you're talking?
That's what I'm talking about.
And what's your hope here?
My hope is that you allow municipalities to still require conditional use review for some of these residential uses. Keep in mind that S237 removed the ability to deny an application based on character of the area. So that specter of character of the area leading to a DRB denial was removed for anything up to 4 units, right? Conditional use review allows a community and the applicant to have a project-based conversation about things folks might not have thought about, like traffic, like multimodal connectivity, like community services. And when we do conditional use review here in the city of St. Albans, it's not used as a means to deny an application. It's used as a means to make sure that development's going to be successful for the quality of life of its residents, the ability to provide services, for the quality of life of the rest of the neighborhood. And if we start adding more uses to permitted by right, we're going to have to start putting many of those standards into our general standards that every project has to comply with, because now our zoning administrator on their own is going to have to be the one that makes sure, that ensures that issues like that are taken into account, which we can do, but it might be a few years before we strike the right balance. Whereas
So this
conditional use,
are you suggesting that actually shifting to permanent would actually slow things down, perhaps? Given that there'd be a
yeah, possibly, because now we're going to feel like if we can't talk about these things with the DRB and provide conditions and get solutions from the applicant that are specific to this project, that make sense just for this project, then we're going to have to start taking these concerns into account for every single application that comes before the zoning administrator.
Got it. So the plus you're saying is that this continues if we allow for conditional use review for residential properties, that this would allow the conversation that could review unintended consequences, that could review all services and all impacts.
Yeah. And frankly, I think a compromise here would be make the duplexes permitted by right, but remove the permitted by right for the 3 to 4 unit rule and allow the 3 to 4 units to be conditional use.
Okay,
Yes.
Wendy, thought.
Yeah, now that's interesting about the
Yeah.
3 to 4 unit. So, so my question is, when you're envisioning the conditional use, is that for a whole development of of a duplex, or is that a duplex being built on a vacant lot, or is that a single family being turned into a duplex? Or all of them?
Well, basically the way our rules are written, and I think we're similar with a lot of communities, is that if the result of your project is a duplex, no matter if it's a new building or a conversion of an existing building, we just process it as a duplex application. But there might be little differences between if it's a new, I mean, if it's an existing building, then typically we're not having conversations about where the building goes because there it is. So there are some differences, but when you're taking into account traffic, parking, community services, the fact that 2 households are going to be living there is the same among all the applications.
Okay, so
So you're asking for, make duplexes by right, but 3 to 4 units could be allowed to continue to have conditional use review.
Yes, if
For
you
all
change the word to allowed rather than permitted, it allows the municipality to choose if they want those to be permitted by right or conditional use review. And in some parts of a municipality, in some neighborhoods, maybe it's permitted by right, but in other neighborhoods that are where growth is new and you're working it out, then you still require conditional use review for that type of development.
I just have a clarifying question. Did
Yeah.
we take out the ability of the towns to do character of the neighborhood? I know we took it out as an appeal, but in somewhere in that bill, did we also say that the towns couldn't consider character of the neighborhood?
Yes,
Well,
in
it-
S237 back in 2020, it removed character of the area as a reason to deny an application for anything up to 4 units of housing.
yeah, I didn't either.
Right, that was a step
You
toward
weren't on the committee then.
stopping discrimination against multifamily homes.
Which we did that before, with Michael.
Randy, and that has to be it, because so we can get to.
Well, I just have a question about the conditional use for 3 and 4 units is, could a particular municipality that essentially doesn't want any 3 or 4 units, in other words, does not want that increased density to essentially deny all 3 and 4 unit applications in the municipality for this conditional use exemption. In other words, is that basically a potential way of, in effect, changing the overall policy, which is to increase density that's contained in this bill?
Yes.
Well, hey, look, a DRB, a DRB might be, it's potential a DRB could be hostile to that sort of thing. They would have to find a documented reason to deny. You can't use character of the area anymore. You can't just say it doesn't fit in. You can't say that. You'd have to find a standard, a traffic standard, or environmental standard to deny it. And even then, that's the exception to the rule. That most municipalities are using conditional use review as a way to make sure the application is successful, not
Exactly.
ultimately, not to deny it. And that's why that's why we have appeals, because sometimes DRBs overstep their bounds, sometimes DRBs make mistakes, and there are different interpretations of the rule, and clarity is required before a judge in the environmental division.
Are you not denying any quadruplexes right now?
If they meet our dimensional rules,
But that's the whole point of this section, is to get rid of the dimensional rule as a reason to stop them.
well, I mean, there will be still some dimensional rules, depending on how statute's written. It might be the same dimensional rules as a single family home, or it might be,
Yes.
a little bit more than 5 unit, there are gonna be some floor dimensional rules. That's what these bills have been setting up.
Yes, but right now, are you denying 4-unit buildings because of their dimensions, because of something else?
We haven't really denied any, none have really come before us.
Okay,
But
Thank you.
if you don't, yeah, if you don't meet the dimensional floor, then,
4-dimensional floor, which is really different right now.
right,
Right, and that's what we're trying to change is the dimensional floor.
yeah, I did suggest some language for that too. But it sounds like we're running out of time, and I would just hope that everyone reads the rest of my testimony and some of my
Thank you.
suggestions and requests.
Thank
And
you.
I'm happy to come back, or if anyone wants to email me any questions or any other suggested language, I'm happy to supply it.
Thank you. Let's get Mike in.
Okay, my concern, I'm thinking with the dimensional floor is if you're putting a single family in that dimension, then you have a certain amount of yard for 3 people, 4 people,
Mhm.
2 people. If you put a quadruplex in and you have the same dimension,
Right,
then, but you've got more people in using that space, and there's a lot of discussion about quality of life, and if you've got 4 people's kids playing in the same yard,
Mhm.
you might need a larger dimension.
They can still do design review. They just couldn't use the actual dimensions to say the project is denied. You could be creating a studio for someone in the workforce and a 2-bedroom and we could be talking about a 3-flex. I mean, they can still say, you know, this doesn't meet our habitability standard.
Our towns deny quadruplexes because they don't want them, or are there a lot of applications for quadruplexes?
Well, what I heard from Chip was he is saying the community might not want them where new growth is a challenge. And I interpret that as a concern about where it's okay to do quadruplexes and where it's not okay.
But is
And
any,
that is what we're trying to move away from, is some neighborhoods say they don't want quadruplexes. They probably have bigger yards in those areas.
Yeah, but
what I wanna know is there a problem? Are people trying to develop quadruplexes and they're being denied? Or are we solving a problem that might exist sometime?
I think you will hear from people outside of committee who feel like they're being denied the ability to create a
Okay,
quadruplex.
see, but you hear from a lot more people than I hear from. All I know is what I've been told around this table, and that's the public record.
Sure,
And I need to hear what problem I'm solving.
I will work on getting a witness to that effect. I wanna let Mike, you know, you wanted your planner and so we obliged and he's been very patient.
But Chip, thank you, because
Thank you.
I think you had lots of helpful comments so far, so really helpful, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mike,
Hi.
thank you for coming.
So good morning, Senators. Hi, Ian. My name is Mike Miller. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development from the City of Montpelier. I've been planning for about 25 years, and 15 of them I've been a planning director. I was 10 here at Montpelier and 5 before that in very city. I haven't followed this bill closely, my focus has been really over the past couple of weeks on the Budget Adjustment Act and trying to get ourselves some funding for our residents. That's been my big push, so.
Yes.
Well, they seem to have cut that in the Senate.
I'm gonna keep hoping that that's my big push in whatever department, whatever
No,
committee that is in, so.
And Andrew is our touch person, and we're working on it.
Yeah, and we need to work maybe harder in conference.
Yeah. Please do. And if you've got questions, let me know.
Thank you.
I did review what was in the bill last night and reviewed comments, especially Chip's, and I thought he had a lot of good points in his comments on that. Some of the things I just want to go and touch on that he had, his first comment about really the Home Act made a big difference. And for a lot of communities, it's gonna take time for us to go through and make those amendments, especially smaller communities, think of Callis's, the East Montpeliers. It's gonna take them 2 years to re-adopt zoning. And having a kind of continuous process of new mandates, is gonna really be a burden on them to try to get through keeping up on it. So
And I would just say, I think my original intent here was to clarify last year's intent in certain areas, that we don't want to see certain requirements used to deny multifamily housing or density where our intent was to create it.
yes, and I recognize that, and I just wanted to point out that when he made that comment, I thought that's a really good point. We are going next Wednesday, the city of Montpelier is going to make the final changes. Most of our zoning in Montpelier already met the Home Act. We have some of the most progressive zoning in the state.
Yeah.
And so, we are actually gonna be going in next week to be doing things that go beyond what you guys are talking about.
Oh, good.
And so we make a good guinea pig case for you guys to see how this impacts going forward into the future. So, as a planner, I generally have concerns about state mandates. It tends to narrow our flexibility and our innovation that we can do. Certain cases it's necessary. So we kind of evaluate them as we go in, but it does tend to have some narrowing of how we can address things. And we're doing great things in Montpelier. And that just because we do them, like next week, we will be proposing making quadplexes not only permitted uses, but we're gonna remove the density requirement in all neighborhoods that have water and sewer, which I think is something you guys be appreciative of. That doesn't necessarily mean I think that's appropriate for every community and every neighborhood of every community.
Right.
So, I think there are great ideas, and then there's the question of whether it's a great idea that really is applicable. In my professional work, I've worked in communities from Belvedere to Burlington. I've worked in, the biggest to the smallest. And what works in Burlington may not necessarily work in Belvedere. So when we do a mandate, we just have to be careful about, is this gonna work for everybody? Or is this something that doesn't? But I think what came out of the Home Act, by and large, from last year was very good. And it's gonna have a positive impact. So the next 2 points that Chip had are really the two things that are kind of the biggest for Montpelier. One is the prime ag soils that he had a comment in there on. And we are really supportive of the proposal. I know you guys are trying to parse through what we can't really talk about tiers because it's not really, but that concept is what we really would like to see in Montpelier. We would like to see those designated areas, not just the designated downtown, but growth centers or neighborhoods to be exempt from Act 250. And that would make the question of prime ag soils used for alternative wastewater treatment kind of a moot point because they would be out.
Right. The concern there being there are versions of tier 3 that include prime ag soils. Anything you do triggers Act 250.
Okay, so that's kind of.
So you're saying don't put that in tier 3. Let us decide what to do with that.
I don't know about the tier 3 piece. I was just making a comment that from the standpoint of a community that has a tier 1A, we really want to make sure those are exempt from Act 250, and that helps us with our prime ag. We like to go through each, put it on brass plaque on the wall. We are the compact settlement that protects rural countryside. We live by that mantra as planners. And so when somebody goes in and says, as we have in Country Club Road, a 100-acre parcel, we've got 7 acres of it that we would like to develop with 300 units of housing.
Yeah.
But it's prime ag soil. It is currently illegal for us to even mitigate those soils. We can't even pay a check to mitigate to get out of that.
So we haven't fixed that in this bill.
I don't know if it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because
We
it
need
was
to-
a golf course.
I thought, I hope we.
That's why but we're working on putting it into the growth center.
Okay.
But our expectation is, even if we get into the growth center, the way current law is written, we are not out of Act 250. We still need to get in the growth center and have you guys pass a rule that says, if you're in a growth center or a designated downtown, if you're at tier 1A, you're exempt from Act 250.
Yes.
And that makes the prime ag soils go away for us. That's our only thing. I mean,
Yeah,
we'd almost say, just tell us how much to pay the check, but right now it says you can't even pay a check.
can
Yeah,
we,
Primex.
well, I'm seeing Maggie, can we keep working on that language? As a potential for interim or just to make sure it's in the final
Yeah,
tiers?
if we could expand, if we
Yeah.
could expand this language to be, as I think Chip had suggested, maybe we just go and say primary soils that are in these designated areas.
Yeah.
Is not taken into account. So even if we go through Act 250, if primary soils isn't the thing.
Well, or not. Or speed up the process and make sure we have a date certain that towns have to have done this work, because I think all of us, and so finish your comments, but I would love to know, Mike, your carrot that we could provide to encourage towns to be done by date certain on their mapping and
Okay.
planning work, so that we
Yeah.
can put into effect the tiers that they will have created
Yeah,
and the maps.
yeah, so for us, we're working on that, to try to get that through this year for the cities, and that's a big piece for us. You know, that it's a project we want to be able to advance, and we've got a few hurdles, and that's one of them. And so, seeing it's in here, we'll try to get you some language. The second piece he mentioned was appeals. Appeals are probably Montpelier's number one issue for projects that aren't Country Club Road. We have a bad reputation. Everyone says the Montpelier zoning stops all this development. It actually doesn't. We issue all the permits and then the neighbors appeal to court. Whether this is the right solution for appeals, I really haven't had enough time to look at alternatives to see what would be the best alternative. But certainly appeals is our biggest obstacle. We've had, I've been here 10 years. I would probably say 30 to 40 housing units have died as a result of
30 to 40?
Yeah, we had
Housing unit.
housing unit.
Oh, how they are.
So sorry, which appeals section are you saying is really useful?
It was,
Well, it was on 12, but that was the 10% rule, but are you talking
that
about
was the 10%. I was just saying
municipal
in
appeals?
general.
You're talking about municipal appeals, not Act
Right.
250 appeals?
Not Act 250 appeals.
Yeah,
Okay.
So
so anything we do to,
anything you do to help that, and I don't know, as I said, I haven't looked at what are the 5 options, and this is why we came.
one
up with this
includes
one.
exemptions for 25 units or less, which sounds like it might have.
It would have made a difference. We had a 16-unit building, and some of them don't actually get appealed. Usually they die because the neighbors come together and simply knock on the door and say, this project's never gonna see the light of day.
Yeah.
Everybody in Montpelier is an attorney, is married to an attorney, or is related.
You have.
So-
we have the amount of time
So-
now.
So,
Yeah.
it doesn't take long when a prominent attorney knocks on your door and says, your project's never gonna see the
So
light of day."
Vermont has double the number of master's degrees on average, and Montpelier has double the number of Vermont's average master's degrees. It's frightening, you can see.
Yes.
That's
Local
great.
government here.
I love it.
Um,
But-
Randy, sorry. So,
Should we limit the ability of a lawyer to file a suit in the county in which he lives?
Yes.
But
Really.
that wasn't my issue. My
Okay.
question was, on those things that are appealed, do you find that you win or lose an appeal, or is the appeal itself such that it causes people to withdraw?
It causes people to withdraw.
And of the number that you mentioned, can you just give me just a rough percentage as to how many just people walk away from it as a result? Half, third?
Almost all of them. Very few people have actually gone. We've had one, I can remember last year, 2 years ago, that the developer said, no, we're gonna go through with it.
Right.
And then beyond that, there's the 16 unit on Sibley that went down because of neighbors,
Right.
up on North College Street. There's just a number of them that we can just pick right through that.
Right.
They'll come up with a project, the neighbors show up and they say,
Right. And I'm glad
I
you said that.
I don't have the money to put in
Because
the appeal.
The other committees say, but not a lot of projects lose their appeal. And we're saying it's the ones that never get there.
And
The ones that
that-
never get, yeah.
It's the ones that,
And part of that, we can't legislate, because part of it is just neighbors being upset, and
Sure.
so,
But
you know,
the
we
low
just have to have
units count.
reasonable expectations.
I think the 25 units
They
or more would help with your infill and would help with those appeals. Wouldn't it? The 25 units?
Specifically,
Yes, that I think would. There's an exemption. I don't know if it's in certain areas, Tate, but for 25 units or less
Water and
than.
wastewater, so it's within that.
Right.
Right, we're served by water,
Yeah,
wastewater.
yeah.
25 municipal appeals would not be allowed to go forward.
Yeah, either if there are appeals, I mean, I recognize, constitutionally, we have due process
Mhm.
rights. If there was a way of short circuiting those, really kind of go through and ferret out those frivolous appeals that are really just there to.
Well, the
But
e-court,
I don't know how we can actually do that
Yeah.
without,
Yeah.
but so
That's fine.
help us understand, because the e-court has the ability now to get rid of frivolous appeals, but you municipal bodies don't have that ability? To deem what's frivolous and what's not?
we usually, if somebody appeals, an administrative permit to the DRB, we process them very quickly, and it's not an issue. It does hold up projects. It's when those get appealed from the DRB to the e-court
So
that you're
e-court has
basically.
the ability now to
But,
get
yeah,
rid of
the
frivolous.
municipality would only be able to say to the e-court, we think this is frivolous and here's why, but the e-court
But
will make the decision.
most of these aren't getting there.
Mm-hmm.
You get the knock from the attorney on the door that says, I'm gonna drag this out all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And that just gets too expensive.
Mhm.
And
Mm-hmm. Right.
I know projects in my time that went down with exactly that trend.
Right. And just also just wanting to be friends with your neighbors. Do you know if we've ever talked about having the select board be the appeal and appellant board for DRBs? And I know DRBs are pretty new.
DRB's been around since 2002.
Oh, okay.
Gosh, we've had DRB.
I think people would cry
forever.
Well, we changed a lot of.
What?
things.
We just add another layer, I think, because then
Well-
I don't.
We'll have that instead of the e-court is what.
Yeah, I think we
Mhm.
need to.
I don't think they're experts either.
We,
Well,
Yeah,
we
we
might
might
move
get
on to
older.
any final.
Okay,
No
so,
more than we
and I was really, if there are any questions,
Mhm.
we have, like I said, the parking issue, I think
Right.
we would really like to see things back out. I
Mhm.
don't think these are bad ideas. I just don't necessarily think they're necessarily good mandates. The city of Montpelier does allow for shared parking and tandem parking, and we don't discriminate. We basically leave it to them, to the
Mhm.
landlords to manage. We want to make it as easy as possible, but just because it works in Montpelier does not necessarily mean
So what are you suggesting for this bill?
Take some of that out.
I would have
Take it out.
Mhm.
taken those out, and the parking space size,
Mhm.
depending on how that comes in.
Right.
We really need the flexibility, there's certain geometry things, the narrower you make a parking space,
Yeah.
the wider the aisle has to be in order to fit in. So if someone has a parking area that has a unique geometric shape, they may need a 9 foot or larger
Right.
parking space.
And as Chip pointed out, accessible parking is more substantial
Yeah.
also and needs to be considered.
Yeah, and I think, I know, and I recognize what you're trying to do, try to remove the barriers. I think a lot of times you're gonna be chasing the people who wanna use zoning. Zoning's a tool. You can use it for doing good things, you can use it for doing bad things, and you're gonna keep chasing people. As soon as you get the parking fixed, somebody who wants to use zoning for nefarious reasons is just gonna shift to FAR, floor area ratio, and they're gonna kill your projects using floor area ratio. So I think what we'll end up doing is creating.
So we've already put parking in the home act, we've already,
Yeah, we'll look at
Done
these
with
provisions. I think we've heard from enough planners that this is
we should
It's
probably.
a
take
big
that.
departure, so yeah, we will be working on those sections. And take these out. Any final?
I guess the last, one, we are doing, as I said, we are doing a lot of these things. We're gonna be making quadplex, we're doing a lot of these things, so we're gonna have a lot of good things that I think are gonna percolating over the next couple of years to see
Yeah.
how much of a difference it makes.
Right.
We've already had, as I said, duplex by right. We've already had, everything has been permitted. In fact, everything is permitted, up through conditional uses for all the zoning districts with water and sewer right now. Right, the proposal we have now is that only 15-unit buildings and higher will need conditional use review in Montpelier. So everything's administrative, we're fast getting permits out.
Right.
I think what I want to make sure you guys understand, is the impact that made has been relatively modest.
Mhm.
We haven't seen, so if you're thinking, well, we're gonna do all this, it's gonna make a difference, it's gonna take time.
Mhm.
And we have rezoned everything to make everything compliant, and I think
Mhm.
that's a key point that has been missed. A lot of these changes are gonna create a lot of non-conforming uses, a lot of
Right.
non-conforming things, and those are still gonna get caught up in in conditional use review.
Right.
In 2018, Montpelier did a huge comprehensive, prior to 2018 to get adopted in 2018, we did a comprehensive study of every neighborhood, 54 neighborhoods,
Right.
to identify what is the right zoning to make 90% of all the properties conforming. So we've got the right parcel sizes, we've got the right density, we've got the right setbacks, we've got the right heights. So now we don't have non-conforming, we don't have that as a barrier. Other communities that are just kind of cobbling things together might find if they did that analysis, and when we did that analysis, more than 50% of Montpelier could not be built under the zoning
Right.
in 2017.
Right.
Now 90+% can be built, and
Mhm.
most of it could be built administratively.
Right.
So that's the point. I think one of the things, what we really need is to get back to how can we get more good planning, and good
Mhm.
zoning done? How can we,
Right.
is it a funding thing? Is it a requirement to regional planning commissions to say, hey, you guys really should do this analysis
Yeah.
of every zoning bylaw?
We're
and
working
see.
on that. Yeah.
So,
And I think we do have to end, I'm hearing this takeaway that if we let municipal agents do their work, they're doing it well, they're meeting the needs of their community. Do want to emphasize that you're saying that small group of people being able to gum up that work you're doing is your biggest challenge. Just want to emphasize that.
Yeah.
I asked Mike a question.
Uh-huh. Oh, you did? Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I asked Mike a question. Okay, so we agree. More good planning, more good zoning, all great. How do we get, what's the carrot to get our communities to do this faster and see that it has benefits for them? What is the carrot? Because we're talking about a time frame for people to adopt these zoning maps, these tier maps ASAP. And what would you suggest for us to, because I think we're wanting to hang more on getting all the mapping and the zoning in place and the mapping and the tier work in place.
I think he's saying freedom. I think it's saying.
No.
I think if I was gonna go say, if you're talking about the tiers, I think it should be something that can grow and change over time. We shouldn't have a fixed map that we're adopting and then said, these are the areas that are gonna be tier 1, these are gonna be tier 2.
Mhm.
And over time, if we've got various state designations, as I apply in 2025 for a new neighborhood, that new neighborhood, when it gets approved, and the advantage is there's a separate board that is approving this and determining whether or not Montpelier is appropriate and is meeting the requirements of design, zoning, density, everything for the new neighborhood, as opposed to saying what zoning districts. I would continue to emphasize what state designations.
Mhm.
And
Designations.
if you're in a state designated
Mhm.
X, then you can have it. So I think I
Mhm.
overheard your conversation earlier. Yes, part of Montpelier would be 1A, our designated downtown, our
Mhm.
growth center. If a project came in that was outside of that, it would still have to go through Act 250. And I'm fine with that. I'm good with that. I'm most concerned about, as I work with one of our select board now, one of our counselors, one thing we want to try to do is to say, we want to make things easier for people to do what we want them to do,
Yeah,
and harder for them to do things we don't want them to do.
Yeah.
And if we want them to be developing the downtowns, exempting Act 250 is just one way of saying, you now only need one permit and there's one chance.
Right.
Not two permits that we then have to go to conference to rectify and
Mhm.
consolidate the changes on, and then there's multiple sets of appeals.
But you'd still potentially be looking for exemptions outside of your core downtown. We had a gentleman come who wants to do 27 units along Route 2. And he said the town was fine with it and everything would get stuck in Act 250. Are you seeing areas, we're trying to define 1B and other things for exemptions. Are you still seeing areas outside of your core designated area, especially with the floods you're having for that you want the flexibility to grow without Act 250 triggers?
I think it would be great. I think we do a great job. Where we draw that line, if anyone's familiar with Route 302 Montpelier, Tractor Supply
Yeah.
and the Cody, that's not in our growth center.
Mm-hmm.
Anything in there would trigger Act 250. Do I think that should trigger Act 250?
Right.
No, but I'm more concerned about making sure we get our exemptions up there.
Yeah.
Is there a different trigger? And I think that's where
Yeah.
I think I would
Yeah.
have to really sit down and talk to people who are where they are at with
Mhm.
that, as to whether or not, because that is also, you know, for us, it is strip development,
Mhm.
but it is a strip development that's connecting to Berlin's little node, it's connecting over to Berry City's little node.
It's on
And not,
That's really
and
what I'm
not
trying to
Route 7, not
Yeah,
Route
that's the
7
transit corridor.
heading
Absolutely.
down into the
Yeah.
farm country where it's like, well, it's just,
For me, it's kind of like between 1A and 1A for so many miles, you
Should
know,
be 1B.
it's 1B, yeah.
I have a question that
Okay.
is more of a request than a question for now.
Yeah.
If you are able to, or if you're thinking about it, it would be good to know a projection of the impact of what we've already done. Because I am hearing from folks that what we've already done, what we did in S100 did have an effect and will have an effect. And so if you are making projections, it would be great to know the increment.
And-
You don't need to.
Yeah, we
okay.
don't have to speculate right now.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, most of your home act, City of Montpelier had in 2018.
Right.
So
You're right. This is
We
not
have
for the
lived, we have
Montpelier
lived this for
specific-
5
right,
years, so we actually can tell you
So
what it's gonna
actually
be
what,
like.
yeah, so
as a
that would
result
be
of the
helpful
home act
to know.
is-
Right.
Yeah,
Is
is your experience.
it has opened up a lot, and we've had a lot of smaller infill projects happen as a result that would not have happened prior to 2018. So those single families to duplexes, those duplexes to triplexes, those addings of 1 units that would never have been allowed before are now being allowed.
Mhm.
And that's been positive, but when you're talking about a housing need gap of hundreds and thousands,
40,000.
it's like, we're not gonna get there with the small pieces. It's the big projects, and the big projects are the ones that are running into Act 50.
Thank you for
And the big
reminding.
projects are being
that's
held by,
That's very helpful.
and I think he's also saying those projects and more of the infill are being held up by appeals and the threat of appeals. Because I think you
Yeah.
would have had a bigger impact in Montpelier proper had you not had some of those appeals.
Okay.
And so if you ever need me, I do
You right
work
here.
right down
Yeah.
the road, so you
Yeah.
can contact Maggie and she can get me
Yeah.
right back in.
You can,
So,
you can
Thank
thank
you.
Maggie
Thank
and
you.
Senator Cummings. We
Thank you,
appreciate
Mike,
it.
it's great, thank you.
Thank
You and the shepherd, it's always terrific.
So I think what we should do is go through as many municipal zoning sections as we can in Allen. And revisit them now that we've talked to some planners.
Good idea.
Is people okay with that?
Mhm.
We have really big. Not to untangle on the Act 250 stuff, but I think actually the municipal planners were helpful to our thinking in the Act 250 pieces. So we'll dwell on them. And we'll look at, you know,
Oh, right.
I'm not even good at puns, so I'm intended. But yay, Ellen.
We're on page 2.
I think we're on page 11.
We're not on page.
Oops, let me go to the new bill, sorry.
Yes,
Oh,
we're
really?
gonna jump.
I have 8.1.
She just said we're skipping ahead, so yes, we were on page 2, we're
Okay.
jumping ahead.
And it's on 8.1.
Yeah.
Because Allison was throwing out pages and I didn't have.
Oh, Chip had asked us to look at 7.2, which is why I was giving you
Oh.
pages on 7.2.
So what should we be on now of 8.1?
8.1.
Right, but what page?
We go to page 12.
So Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel, says the municipal zoning sections start with section 9. I don't think you have reviewed this language yet. This is elements of the municipal plan. So on page 12. The municipal plan shall have a housing element that shall include a recommended program for public and private actions to address housing needs as identified by the Regional Planning Commission. The program shall use data on year-round and seasonal dwellings, include specific actions to address the housing needs of persons with low income and persons with moderate income and account for permitted residential development. It's changing should to shall. I honestly don't really know why. I mean, typically we use shall. This is in the part of the municipal plan as the housing element of it, so
I think we were encouraging it
Stronger.
before and we're really asking for it.
stronger language.
Is this in the town plan? Do all towns have town plans?
No.
Okay, and not all towns have planning and zoning. So are we trying, what are we, I can't see a town that can't get its act together to do planning and zoning, being able to have the ability to write a plan for addressing the state's housing issues. I think it's almost the majority of our towns don't have any full-time person.
But they all have regional planning commissions that we are giving resources to help them through this process. If they want to,
But they don't want to.
but then they don't have to.
Okay, so why,
Most of them have a municipal plan.
Yes.
They might not have zoning bylaws.
Right. But
this
most
is saying-
towns have plans.
This is saying you shall consider your housing needs in your municipal plan, which is what we're asking them to do to meet this.
this sounds a little more complicated. You shall consider housing.
But people, okay, should to shall. So last year, I think we wanted to encourage them, and I think we're saying we need this data. And we need you to listen to your RPC, work on the tiers.
So yeah, it's still existing. Everything except for the shall is existing
Yeah.
language.
But it's only been 6 months. I assume the Home Act didn't go in until July 1st.
Most of it.
They said we asked an awful lot of towns to do that. Now we're asking more.
I don't wanna die on this hill.
Yeah.
I, like, this one is.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal, like, once they do a housing,
Yeah.
when they're doing a housing element, we're not saying they have
Right,
to do it at a certain time. They need to use this data, and they'll do it with the regional commissions, and the regional commissions will have that
Mhm.
data.
And what we're asking them to do, in fact, is address the needs of persons with a low income and moderate income so that they're addressing workforce housing in their plan. Okay. So we're okay.
Check.
One word, yay. Next section.
All right, so this is the big one.
Yeah.
Section 10.
Yes. So this section has multiple elements in it, and yesterday you started talking about it, but we didn't review the language, so. This is regards into the duplex and quadruplex language, so. The bottom of page 12. Bylaw shall designate appropriate districts and reasonable regulation for multi-unit and multifamily dwelling. No bylaw shall have the effect of excluding these multi-unit or multifamily dwellings from the municipality. In any district that allows year-round residential development, duplexes shall be a permitted use with dimensional standards that are no more restrictive than required for single-unit dwellings, including no additional land or lot area than would be required for a single-unit dwelling.
This is clarifying by right duplexing.
Okay,
That's all that's to.
a duplex, you have a lot,
Mm-hmm.
fifth of an acre. A duplex takes up the same coverage on that fifth of an acre that a single family home does.
Mhm.
But a duplex will require, well, a duplex will require 2 parking spaces.
Mhm.
So I just,
So they can still require the lot coverage for the parking spaces, which is the other conversation we're having. They just can't ask for the dimension of the home to be bigger in order to allow a duplex.
okay, so
They can, I think as Mike said, they have other tools at their disposal. But we're taking one away that says, literally, if we have existing homes that we wanna turn into duplexes. If they make that ratio more
I don't
restrictive,
think
you can't.
most people are thinking of existing homes turning into
Right.
it's when you're building new homes. And I heard some concern about this takes extra services, this takes, that the town needs to be able to review that. And I thought they were asking for
He wasn't saying for duplexes.
what?
You were saying for multi, 3
He
and
was saying
4
for
units,
appointment.
we
Okay.
would like to be able to still have conditional use
Mhm.
review.
And I support,
Yeah,
I'm still looking.
but there,
Five
I mean,
quadruplexes on my land.
towns, including Burlington before the Home Act, had restrictions on creating a duplex based on the size of your lot, which I think has always been a weaponized tool.
But do they still have that?
Not anymore, but I'm saying this was to convert something to, there's no more land in Burlington.
Right,
Elsewhere to
but
create
what-
a new unit.
that used to happen. Montpelier used to have a lot more restrictive zoning. They have changed. Montpelier, Burlington has changed. I don't wanna write a new law for a problem that doesn't exist
This is
now.
clarifying our law last year, which, you know, everyone's saying, give us time to do that, but we don't want them to do it in a way that doesn't allow a current single-family home to turn into multifamily housing. People have very large single-family homes that could turn into multifamily housing, and they can make those decisions.
Fine, but is that, this to me, when you say duplexes shall be allowed by right, says that I have a right to put a duplex anywhere I want. And,
It's anywhere a single-family home's allowed.
okay, I can live with that. I have a much harder time with quadruplex.
So that's the next section, but we're
Especially if
okay
you
with the
can't
duplex.
character of the neighborhood. You can still do design review, right?
Yes, you can do design
So
review.
they can't be a big brick box. Wouldn't be.
Right, exactly.
That's too expensive.
Right,
They'll be
they could
cement
be,
box.
they are generally look like a really large single-family home that someone else has, you know, with very few people in it.
There's,
Okay. So on page 13, subsection 12, there is a choice here that I don't think you fully talked about yesterday, but this is on a topic you discussed. So in any area served by municipal water and sewer that allows residential development, bylaws shall establish lot and building dimensional standards that allow 5 or more dwelling units per acre for each allowed residential use. Any lot that is smaller than 1 acre but granted a variance of not more than 10% shall be treated as 1 acre for purposes of the subsection. Density and minimum lot size standards for multi-unit dwellings shall not be more restrictive than for those for single-family dwellings. So that's what you had been discussing previously. Here is an option instead. In any area served by municipal water and sewer infrastructure that allows residential development, bylaws shall establish lot and building dimensional standards that allow 5 or more dwelling units per acre for each allowed residential use, and a minimum lot size of 1/5 of an acre. Density and minimum lot size standards for duplexes and multi-unit dwellings shall not be more restrictive than those for single-family dwellings.
I don't see Seth's language.
So, what's Seth's language?
That's what we talked about the other day.
No, I know that we talked about it, but
That's the option I thought we were gonna look at. Because it's not the
Well,
20 units
so-
per acre.
the language they just
allow
reviewed was
5
from Seth.
quadruplexes on my 1 acre lot.
That's what I was trying to
20
avoid, and
parking
Seth's language elegantly did that,
Yeah.
and I don't see it anymore.
So I didn't make a choice here. All I did change was the prior page.
Can I just look at seven, two?
I thought we had a solution.
We did. With Cecily.
It's so in
At
7.2, it's on page 18. I can hand that to you.
I have it, but okay, so all I did last night was what you told me to do, so
We said choose Seth's language, which is struck.
Okay, I'm sorry, so on draft 7.2, the
Mhm.
page is it on?
Yes. Sorry, 18,
Okay,
line 20.
any districts served by municipal owners?
We're tying ourselves in knots about 1/5 of an acre, and you could do 4 units on 1/5 of an acre. But then you pointed out that Seth's language accomplishes exactly what we were aiming for.
What were we aiming?
And
Smaller lot
we
sizes?
were definitely aiming for not the 1/5 of an acre, you know, and you can do 5 subdivisions and create 20 lots on an acre, something less, but defining 3 and 4 units as being allowed on municipal water and sewer, and that's what Seth's language did.
can you read me the language?
Yes.
Because
I still think this would allow 4 quadruplexes
This would, we don't, I'm trying to avoid that.
That's what I'm.
So
trying
let,
to do.
can we just read the other language that we don't see anymore? In any district that is served by municipal sewer and water infrastructure that allows residential development, multi-unit dwellings with 4 or fewer units shall be a permitted use requiring no additional land or lot area than would be required for a single unit dwelling, unless that district specifically requires multi-unit structures to have more than 4 dwelling units. That is the quadruplex per lot rather than 20 units on an acre.
I am-
The 4 units of
I'm
5.
still not seeing what is preventing, if quadruplexes have the same standards as single family homes. What is to prevent a developer who wants to get a lot of units in to put 5 quadruplexes in and 20 parking spaces minimum in my 1 acre yard? I spent most of the weekend trying to visualize that, and I couldn't. It's extreme density, and extreme density comes with its own issues.
Well, I think that's what we're. 1 unit with 4 units in it, 1 building with 4 units in it is what I think you're talking about, as opposed to 4 units on 1 acre with 5 units in each one. That's what you're envisioning and can't envision. Right?
5 quadruplexes on 1/5 of an acre of land. If it's even physically possible.
We're trying to strike that out.
Okay, that's what I want. The city has to allow quadruplexes somewhere, but you don't. That is very extreme density, and it may work in Chittenden County, but it's sure not gonna work up in Island Pond or Belvedere.
They can still say that parking limits that.
And that wasn't our intent, right?
Or what, yeah.
So that's a glitch and we need to figure out the language.
Well, our intent was what Seth put here, which is that you can duplex by right anywhere in the state, but you can quadruplex by right on municipal water and sewer. With design review, because that achieves density. And you have really big historic homes that
But
easily become 4 or more units.
right, but quadruplexing is
Most-
different than building 4 or 5 units on 1 acre.
Yeah, but that's,
We're
you need to
separating.
make clear, there are in some towns, maybe 1 big home,
Mm-hmm,
which will take a lot of money to convert into a quadruplex. All right? That's very limited,
right,
okay?
so,
Many of the big homes have already been turned into condos and units in Montpelier. We have 1 street, which you're living on. But if this says, this is development, so anything, there's nothing here that says to me, if somebody wants to put up 5 quadruplex, the city could limit them on parking.
you're not wrong, and I'm gonna print us out Chip's language,
Okay.
who, works very precisely to, Chip was just on,
Chip Sawyer.
St. Albans.
Yeah.
Yeah. To really address the intent of what we're talking about, you may still disagree, but I think what happened is the 5 units per acre on green space gets really conflated with like these existing smaller lots where we're trying to say. Most of the development we're gonna get in quadruplexes is infill, is it in existing lots that are just smaller than an acre. And Chip accomplishes that.
That's fine. It's having the loophole that says we're maintaining 1/5 of an acre for single family home. Now we're saying we could put 4 family homes on that
Right.
same 1/5.
That was not our intention.
That is not
And we're
the-
trying to clarify our true intention, and Chip might have an issue with it.
I don't want to turn the lot into such a mini chicken house.
I hear you.
And we don't need that.
No, but we are taking a lot.
But I want Chittenden
Oh,
County to still
Lord.
have 4 units,
That's right.
municipal water and
Chittenden
sewer,
County
and
can do
they're
that.
blocking that.
Did you say that to Belvedere?
Right, this would
It's
not
going
say that.
to- Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me what Chip's language is.
We're pretty,
Yeah, and here, this is, the, kind of 1/3 of an acre in size, right, 12 units.
Mhm.
Yeah. Alright, so you're.
So
That makes sense.
so the language at the bottom of page 12 into page 13 is Seth's language.
Mhm.
There was a copy and paste issue because it's missing a sentence, so that is my fault in
Okay.
editing. I had moved on to the next topic, which is subsections 12,
Mhm.
which is also does have Seth's language highlighted in yellow. So
Okay,
I'm
I'm sorry.
talking about two separate
Okay.
concepts that do overlap.
Yeah. So I think what's missing from Seth's language is about 3 and 4 units,
Yes.
which is the challenge.
Yes, so that was an accidental deletion because even the rest of the statute is missing, so
Right.
I will fix that.
Okay. But I think then we don't want the other yellow part. Actually,
Okay, so.
Yeah.
It is related but slightly different.
Mhm.
So Seth bill has both sets of language because it's two different paragraphs in the same statute.
Okay.
So if you don't want to make any changes to subsection 12, you can decide to do that too. But the language on page 12 is in subsection B. The language on page 13
Right.
is regarding subsection 12.
Let's not get there yet
Okay.
because we've lost our multi-unit on municipal water and sewer. And our decision there. Not well.
I can't edit it at the moment, but
No, I know. Yeah. So you want to go.
No, I'm just saying, it
Okay.
was there,
Right.
and there
Yeah.
wasn't a decision.
But I hear Anne that even if we said that, it isn't completely elegant, it doesn't completely address the problem. And Chip might have done a better job. of
Yeah,
that.
we've left lawyers in this town. I don't want one lawyer who
Right.
decides to develop the
Yeah.
acre down the other side of town.
Right.
Say, the law says here that
Mhm.
you have to allow 5 units per acre.
Mhm.
And a quadruplex is a unit and you can't require any bigger size.
Mhm.
And so I can put 5.
Yes, and I think, in fact, we'll read it now, but I think he tries to address your other concern about a little bit more lot coverage for multi-unit beyond a duplex.
If you,
Oh, sorry.
I mean, history has taught us if you put a whole lot of people, especially including the
Ellen,
bunch which
Yes.
may have
Okay.
social issues, together you cause social problems.
Alright, so it's on page 3 of this,
Mhm.
and then it's 1, 2, the third full paragraph. I believe,
Community truly.
correct, I believe, right?
Mhm.
Is that what you're, okay.
This is where he was asking us to continue to have these as conditional use review.
Mhm.
Yes,
Well, and we're saying that this is a way to avoid the 20 units an acre.
Mhm. And to bridge between a duplex and if you have 3 or 4 units, you need a little bit of a larger lot size.
Yes,
Mhm.
it's,
But not, a whole
I
acre.
know, everybody hates people that have a half-acre lot. I'm having difficulty with that, but I.
I don't know that
well, some of the people.
Yeah, but it's being talked about like it's a bad thing to own a home on an acre lot.
No, I think that no one has to change their own home use, but it's saying they might live next to someone who's on a half acre, who turns it into 3 or 4 units. And we can't hate them.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the thrust is that anyone that wants to build a single family nice house, not that they shouldn't do that.
No, this,
So they're welcome to do that, but what we're saying is if you want to also build a multiplex
Right.
or a duplex, you can do
there's
that
a
too.
huge market for single family homes. Developers are building them. Developers also want to build duplexes and triplexes
That's fine,
because they want to make it affordable for people to purchase it.
right?
But the zoning prevents,
Yeah,
the zoning only allows single family
This
in
doesn't-
many places.
this ends discrimination against
Yeah.
all forms of housing.
Many places that have a population of 100 people, 5 duplexes might not be appropriate.
Do they have municipal water and sewer?
I have no idea.
Okay, but that's what we're saying, is this has to be.
Yeah,
on
so
board.
let's go through the language
Right.
then.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Randy, do you want to read it? It's your constituent.
I read it.
Oh, okay, I read it out loud. I don't know, are we reading it out loud or people just reading
I
it?
know, I think we should read it out loud.
Randy started.
That's fine. So if the community truly wishes to pursue a tract where 3 or 4 unit structures are allowed at a density higher than 5 units per acre, then I would suggest the following language. In any district that is served by municipal sewer and water infrastructure that allows residential development, multi-unit dwellings with 4 or fewer units shall be permitted on lots that are at least 1/3 of an acre in size with an allowed density of at least 12 units per acre, unless that district specifically requires multi-unit structures to have more than 4 dwelling units.
So
I believe that allowing 12 units per acre is a good compromise between 5 and 20, but I certainly prefer to stick with 5 currently. Oh, that's what Chip was saying. 4 or fewer permitted on lots that are at least 1/3 of an acre in size, with an allowed density of at least 12 units per acre.
And the town still has design review and all of this, and traffic review and parking review.
But what this is going to do, and I've had the feeling what we wanted to do is infill those quadruplexes between the houses that have that half-acre zoning. This would create an area that was quadruplexes, duplexes. It would create an area in the town that permitted, that had very dense zoning.
I do see an issue that I think is against Chip's intent, which is it says at least 12 units, and I think he meant up to 12 units.
I think so.
No, I mean,
I don't know.
yeah, I think he might have meant.
I think
at
he means
least
what
12
he
units.
said, but
Well, if he
we
said a
have to
third,
digest.
if we can talk to him, but if he said 1/3 of an acre could have up to a quadruplex, I don't think he meant more than 12 units.
He would be creating a very.
He said this is a
dense
compromise between 5 and 20, so I'm seeing him as saying up to 20 units, yeah, clearly, up to 12, up to 12.
At
Up to
least,
12, not
yeah,
at least 12.
Yeah,
I read it separately.
okay.
So
Has he-
Or maybe he's watching and he'll tell us if that's not. his
Well, hopefully he's watching. He may be doing work.
let's go around the room on this language, Wendy.
I think it's fine, especially for now. It's hard when we're doing just a piece at a
Yeah.
time. And there was a community that declined to have water service
Mm-hmm.
to because of a fear of affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something we should
Right.
just talk about.
Right, and this supposes that they have 1 full acre, which a lot of these lots don't have. So they might be getting 6 units, sorry, 8 units from that.
I think this is better than the other,
Yes,
Yeah.
than what we've had, yes.
Yes.
This
So
is
you're-
the best so far.
you're
So,
okay moving forward with this
Yes.
until further notice?
Yes.
Ellen, does it work? Does that language work?
Sure, it does strike me as it's different than the intent of what you asked for, but if you wanna go with this, that's fine.
I think what Chip told us, you know, in our kind of, like, when we went up and met with him and looked around St. Albans is he specific is really helpful, you know, and there might be a situation where they have like 0.99 of an acre, and with design review and parking, they can get a pretty good project there. And the town has lots of other tools to say, we don't like this. But this kind of meets us in the middle, and most of the areas that have single family homes, you're basically only saying you can have a quadruplex. But you need 0.66 of an acre to have more than that, which a lot of them are half acre, 2 lots. So it really is just truly about infill and not getting at the 5 new units per acre that are just what you have to permit for new development. At least 5 units, yeah,
And 5 units, not 20,
right.
just clearing that.
When you refer to infill development, let's say you have a 1 acre lot
Mm-hmm,
that has 2 single-family homes on it now,
mm-hmm,
and you want to convert that to multifamily housing.
mm-hmm.
if I read this correctly, the limit in terms of the number of, housing units that you have would be 12.
Would be 8,
On a full acre,
2 houses.
unless you add another unit that doesn't
Yeah,
destroy the
yeah,
lot
if you
coverage.
add- That's,
Yeah.
that's what I meant. If you
Right.
add another unit, the
Mhm.
limitation in terms of an addition,
Mm-hmm,
is enough, assuming you are converting the 2 that you
the
have,
4. Yeah,
to quadruplexes.
right.
So that's 2 and 2, you got
Mm-hmm,
4 and 4 is 8,
mm-hmm,
but you have a 1 acre lot,
mm-hmm,
and 12 is the number on the 1 acre lot.
Right.
That's your limit, if you want to build another unit there, correct?
yes, I think, I don't wanna speak for anybody, but design review can still get at lot coverage.
Mhm.
So it depends on if those 2 single family
That's not
homes are
big.
like on one corner and on the back of the lot,
yeah,
you know, you wanna
yeah.
do it for you.
Exactly,
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. But in terms of that, is that then effectively a limit that we're setting? As opposed to the municipality saying, well, I think you can even get one more.
they are allowed to say, if your multi-unit structures are above 4 dwellings,
Mhm.
you go. You know, I think if you put more quadruplexes on, you get into a lot coverage area anyway. So it's saying, if you want an extra story and you're
Yeah,
gonna do
you
your,
go up a story.
yeah,
Well, if you take an acre and you just measure, some of the houses I've seen,
Yeah.
you could physically put 4 on and have the parking for that.
exactly, yeah.
But what you're saying though, is that excess over the 12 units is something the municipality has the ability to do, but
Mhm.
not necessarily by right. Is that what this is saying?
Yeah, I mean, that just gives the municipality the flexibility to say you have to allow at least this much.
Correct. The 12 is the.
But if you're looking at it and you're saying, let's do an affordable senior, veterans housing project like they did in Winooski that takes up 1/5 of an acre but goes up
Mhm.
12 stories in your downtown, great,
I'm fine with this.
Okay. Okay, I didn't know what that thing said, so
I'm just listening.
She's
I
thinking.
think we're all
I'm
exhausted.
Delaware Potter.
Okay, so for now, we're settling
It's
around
better.
this, we're settling around this fifth.
We're getting there.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that Chip kept saying, just give us specificity, set some different thresholds,
Yeah.
And this, otherwise, we might be saying you could have a quadruplex on just 1/5 of an acre, which was some of the other language that we looked at. And that gets to Anne's concern
Which
that,
gets to answer
hey,
that.
give them a little bit more elbow room.
And if there's happens to be a 1 acre lot in a development with 1 acre lots,
Mm-hmm.
to put 5 quadruplexes in there would be a shock.
Yes.
And then that wouldn't be allowed under this.
Yeah.
So how does this fit with Seth's language, which we also were considering?
I don't even wanna go there.
Okay, fine. I just wanted to.
It's okay, I mean, I don't feel like that's fair to say as the chair to use that question. But I just worry that.
I think this works.
Yeah.
For me, this works with this
Yeah.
concern.
We could turn to Ellen and see what,
But we're
If you
saying
can,
that
yeah.
that this is a minimum by right. But beyond that, if the municipality
If they
wants to
wanna do
make
more,
it
go for
more dense, they've got the
Right.
ability to do
no,
it.
this is a maximum by right. This is a maximum.
By right, that's what.
Yes, yes, sir.
They can.
I just
do
want
more
us to be able to confusing.
But the
This is a maximum
municipality
by
can
right.
make it more dense.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
If if Montpelier wants to go for broke, go for broke.
Don't worry about it, we have enough attorneys.
I mean, an acre's really big, like that's such a fried lot.
But,
An
yeah,
acre
but
in a municipal water.
what this doesn't solve is what we heard. It's the projects, you think, say 16 in Montpelier, and several of them were just, the neighbor knocks on the door and said, I'm glad you're gonna do this, but I'm gonna fight you all the way to Supreme Court, and I figure it's gonna cost you a couple $1 million.
Right.
You don't, you back off.
Those are our appeals section. Those are.
Right,
This doesn't
This
even go,
doesn't solve
this
that.
doesn't solve that, it
No.
doesn't even.
We have,
But it's all.
we have those sections.
But we have those sections and actually Chip was helpful in
Right,
also
and so was
suggesting,
Mike.
yeah, that
Yeah.
we
Right,
look at denials in addition to.
that was helpful.
That is good.
So we have other sections on the neighbor chilling effect. But this is,
We have innovative people, different.
yeah,
So that is section 12.
I guess it is 12.
Okay.
So
We've never talked about getting people, innovative people, I assume that's a girl.
oh, we can talk about that, we should talk about
No,
that.
I just assume it's college students, cause.
I don't wanna avoid that conversation. Page 14. Subsection 14 of section 10. Yeah. Ellen drafted this language and we haven't all looked at it as a committee together yet.
No zoning or subdivision bylaw, that big one.
Yeah.
Do we have them? Other than for the college students in Burlington?
We don't have them, but I will say there are communities in circumference that always look at this to think, is this a way to not have people we don't want here? And, you know, Burlington's not fighting this change. I at least heard that from the mayor and the planner, because it can be selectively used in a way that I think creates civil rights. They're like, well, we don't usually enforce it. I don't know if someone does, but if you create this idea, oh, you can't have, multiple people living in the same unit, it's pretty discriminatory. Yeah, yeah,
You write about 2/3 of your market. And
right,
I
right,
don't see it as a problem.
right.
Hey,
As
look at all
you
these
said,
legislators, we're not related and we're living in the same unit.
Yeah, I think
Montpelier doesn't care.
But
You're creating a rooming house.
Yeah.
right, and then you start to say, but we don't want those people, like students or, legislators. So the intent here is to keep, I do have many in Burlington saying, do this so we don't have to. If Burlington just tried to get this off the books, they'd probably have a fight on their hand. And I am happy to be the bad guy in this one.
I can't
They
see
might have done that.
opposing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I'm not.
I said it to the entire city council, the mayor, et cetera, and no city official so far has come forward to say that.
Yeah.
Other than Burlington, it has this, you know,
Not to my knowledge.
No, I.
never heard.
It's a college, it's usually a college town thing, and now Burlington has other sophisticated tools to
But
deal with.
it can also be an immigrant thing.
it could be a refugee,
Exactly.
it could be a refugee.
Yeah.
It could.
Yeah. Right,
Yeah,
so when
let's
they
just-
say, oh.
Wendy and I are thinking of different terms.
That's why I worry it's a civil
Well,
rights issue, period.
Yeah, I know, I would be surprised that it would be legal, so let's just go ahead
Yeah,
and keep it.
it's, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep moving.
Okay,
Okay, the parking spaces.
Yeah.
Does this represent what, I think it was Mike said, that if you've got an, I've got
I'm
a
on page 14.
We're still doing the thing you don't like, Anne, about municipal,
Limitations on
Limitations, yeah.
bylaws.
Yeah, so the language on lines 14 and 15 is unstruck. So that it just goes back to the status quo. This was publicly funded for a public
Oh,
purpose.
I said to Ellen, go back to the status quo until someone else gives us language. Because we are not gonna do something we don't understand what it does until they give us language.
good,
So,
I think that's a safe thing.
yeah.
yes.
Yes.
Okay, now on to park.
And Chris is giving it to someone, is someone following up on? Chris, or should I?
Kristen,
Winters.
I wasn't following up on Chris Winters, but I'm happy to, you had
No.
that conversation with Chris.
Chris came in and said, we want something for the youth facilities and the group homes
Oh, right.
that are funded by us, and I said, you have to be a lot more specific for us to look at it. Like, all I know, you start talking about.
What did I do wrong?
Okay. So,
No,
until they give us something we can live with, that section is out.
Yeah, we were
But
talking,
we have heard their intent,
and we were talking about contracted.
and we were talking about housing. That was, I think, who made that point, was it
I
Allison?
don't know.
That we wanna limit this to housing, right now it says consumer public goods, that could be a lot of types of
Right.
facilities you said,
Okay.
supermarket. So they're working
Yeah,
on,
public.
yeah,
It's not,
yeah,
I'm going to.
definition, okay.
okay. So we're
This
gonna
is the
get,
first vote down 127. Which is the,
the education,
it's the
Yeah.
waiting.
it's the waiting.
So there is,
Wow.
they are working on that today in Ways and Means. We should have an answer today.
They're getting a report from. What they're doing is they're going back to what the Senate did a year ago. They changed it. Finance never saw it. It came back with a this is it, take it or leave it.
I remember that.
Right, and so they're now getting rid of that, and so
And
they're
they're now
getting rid of
going
the
back
five
to
percent. It's coming to us, they're
Okay.
doing fast tracking it, and it's coming to us.
And last night I got called stupid, incompetent, and I didn't do it.
Yeah,
That's
it's hard.
Where were you?
the school board. The school board was fine. The public was a little rough.
Cause it's very complicated.
So we are getting to parking,
Okay,
just
parking.
pique everyone's excitement.
I thought we just done parking.
Well, that was the.
Well, we
the
were the
parking
concern.
space.
Okay, so we're gonna pull parking now.
Well, we're gonna look at all the things and I haven't, I was waiting for us to hear and to decide together.
Okay,
I
So-
thought the 9 foot is what Mike said. that you need.
they would like.
But maybe sometimes you need 12 if you're manipulating.
We'll take the parking out with Mike.
Right, we can do that. What was there before was 8 by 16. What many of the planners have written us saying is at least do 9 by 18 because that's the F-150.
Fine, then let's do that and then take the
Your
rest of it.
super cab pickup in there.
Yes,
Okay.
okay,
So
so
then,
we're okay keeping that.
And it does say residential parking, but for ADA parking, you might need
Yeah.
a bigger, or maybe it doesn't count as the space when
but
you have
that's
that
what
extra
conditional
area.
use review does, right?
Right.
I don't know, but
Well,
say,
and that's, that, we're dealing with a bigger issue if there's not enough accessible housing because of the way things are. So we're asking people to voluntarily make things accessible, but they don't have
So-
to meet that requirement.
We were asked,
Some of those old houses we want to convert are not.
We're never gonna meet that.
Right.
Yeah.
$1 investment aren't.
okay, so on
Okay.
parking, we were asked to take all the new proposals of parking out except for that 9 by 18. So does that mean taking out tandem parking?
Stand looking out.
no, tandem's still here, what I heard was tandem
Yes, I heard.
is
take it all.
okay for a particular unit.
Yeah.
So that,
Sure.
and I think that really makes sense.
It does,
Mhm.
that you have 1 and 2 on this side, that way you're only fighting with whoever is in,
In your house.
yeah,
Mhm.
and,
Yes,
but in a 4-unit apartment, the problem comes when you can do 2 deep, or 4 deep.
Did someone send us suggested language or Ellen?
I thought,
Well, Phil, you said leave it alone except the size, because
I
I
think,
want some flexibility with that.
I think Chip wrote something for that.
for parking.
Yeah, tandem parking of 2 spaces shall be allowed to count toward the residential parking space requirements for a single dwelling unit.
for a
Yeah.
single,
On
Well,
page
yeah.
2, on his page 2.
Right.
right, but
Thanks, Chip.
it was helpful.
Yeah.
So on our
actually,
line
Wendy,
14.
I shouldn't have shut you down. He talks about ADA as well. Wherever
Yeah,
ADA
he
compliance.
he's the one who raised it.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's
okay, I'm
the one
sorry,
who
I
raised
might have
that
messed up in the bathroom.
You're,
Okay,
that's why he said that was an example
Okay.
of why it needed conditional.
sorry, so we like that change too.
yes,
Okay. Look at us.
Okay. So
Um,
Ellen, clear on all this?
We'll get clear. She might have comments on it, but to make it work in statute, but the intent.
You're gonna add Chip's language in this.
Right, yeah. Adjacent lots, is that the next one that we haven't talked about?
So are we gonna keep, yes, on page 16, are we keeping E,
yes, now that it's been modified, I'm fine. with it.
adjacent or nearby? Yes.
Or presumed valid legal agreement for use.
Gosh, I prefer to say may, just because it's
Okay,
kind of, it could get pretty controversial.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
But there's more flexibility. I mean, Burlington does do that, so, yeah, the bigger towns might be starting to say, you don't have to have a parking spot attached to the building,
Right.
but others may not be ready to do that.
Yeah, Bellas Falls has done it.
Okay, yeah, right, I remember that.
Lots of towns.
Yeah. Okay. Have we gotten through parking?
Yes.
What was so painful?
No, well, it was
Don't
well,
say that, just keep moving.
it isn't, it's got,
Are people okay with the parking spaces being rounded up? Okay.
yes. So Ellen, our next change is, lot coverage.
18.
There's no changes proposed in the lot coverage bylaw.
I do think the planners
I think the
commented on that.
The
Yeah.
50% is very.
Did you wanna look at what the planners' feedback was and work on this?
I will try.
I need
So we need to know by tomorrow.
I am
We're making
going
a
to
move.
fight
We're making
very
a move
hard
on
for
it.
us not to have to be done tomorrow. Cause I don't think it's realistic, and I think that natural resources could do other things.
So his comments here on section 19 on
Portions under the.
on
Section
lot
19.
coverage, is that on page 3, the lot coverage, did Chip have language about that? Cause he had concerns about that as well. To move forward. No,
Yes, it is.
he talked about lot coverage.
Someone did in our
Mike
comments.
Chip did.
Well, Alex, is it like Alex Weinhagen in
Yes.
Heinsberg said
Yes,
something
he
about
said-
that? So I think we're gonna look at this. My brain just doesn't have,
I don't have a proposal on it.
but we're
But I
circling
think
it
it
and
should
we're,
be less.
yeah.
Section 15.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So on page 18, section 16, I don't know if you've talked about this recently. This is striking the ability for there to be a request to vote on bylaws or bylaw amendments.
This came from VLCT, I think.
So a bylaw or bylaw amendment or bylaw amendment or repeal shall be adopted by a majority of the members of the legislative body at a meeting that is held after the final public hearing and shall be effective 21 days after adoption. But so currently, the law allows that unless by action of the legislative body, the bylaw amendment or bylaw repeal is warned for adoption by the municipality by Australian ballot. So the municipality currently has the ability to work on the bylaws and then put the bylaws themselves to a public vote as opposed to just having the select board or whoever vote on them.
Right. This is giving them flexibility to do both without.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think,
because there may be some highly controversial.
yeah.
Change that. You don't wanna alienate all your neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
and so you put it out to a vote.
Right.
So this is striking the ability to put it to a vote.
But if, well, I don't think that's what it's saying. I think it's saying it shall be adopted, et cetera, et cetera. And my understanding of what they were aiming for is not to
Okay,
carve
this-
out an exemption that says it's not
Okay.
fully adopted if there is an election. That you could do either one,
no,
sorry,
Vote.
vote.
Well, why did we change it?
It was like seen as cleanup, but we don't have Ted in the room.
I don't know that this came from VLCT.
Okay, do you know who it came from?
This is in Bongarsville.
Okay.
So I don't know if they worked on the Bongarsville.
They just wanted to force their legislative body to take action and not.
right. But quite honestly, that's why we elect
Right.
legislative bodies.
Oh,
why
that's,
people
yeah,
elect
this is
us to
saying
make
they
hard
don't
choices.
want bylaws to go to a vote. Is that what it was?
Yes.
Yes.
They don't want
They don't want
bylaws
ballots to go to a vote. Okay, sorry.
They want the elected body, who may not be the elected body, could change the bylaws
Right.
next year.
So we're deciding if we want bylaws to be bylaws and not up for
Australian
vote.
ballot.
Australian ballot.
So as opposed to town meeting.
Your representative.
Most
Right.
boards make bylaw decisions by themselves.
Yes,
I would suggest that this is fine. I think this is fair. This is
Okay.
why we elect legislative bodies to do the
Right.
hard work of our
we
community.
pay them so much.
We will hear from people if it's
Just
not
like us,
fine,
we
and
pay
we haven't
much.
heard yet.
They aren't paid.
Yes, this is true, but I don't think that has anything to do with it. They've also been elected to make decisions
No,
on
they
behalf
have
of the
not. They
community.
have been, the select board, yes, they have been elected.
Yeah.
But in very small towns, this is going against the best interest of your family or your neighbor's family.
Do you not wanna do this?
I don't know. I don't know how many
Okay.
times an election has messed up a housing density thing.
Well, a bylaw. I mean, it's kind of back to Mike's point, like, let us do our bylaws and not have so many ways for people to challenge them.
We could just let the other committees figure this out.
Yeah,
Or figure
I
it
feel
out.
like-
We can leave it in
I
and
just
see
don't
what happens.
know if we're solving a problem that is rare.
Well,
Yeah,
okay,
and I don't
Let-
have an opinion.
Well,
I
let's leave it in until someone is
Exactly.
exact.
that's exactly what I. Okay, and then we have on page 19 some dates.
This was something around the 6 months. I think I didn't intend, so I apologize if this is
Oh,
a
this was
to make
the-
it,
Days,
This is what
to make it
Ted was
deemed approved, but that just they shall issue a decision within 180 days. I don't know if that.
180 days after the application was submitted.
Right, but I
Yeah,
kind of didn't
I
want
just
to.
Well, what's 90 days?
Mhm.
3
So that, the first part is they shall, adjourn a hearing and issue a decision within 90 days after the application is submitted, and failure to issue a decision within this period shall be deemed approved and effective on the 181st day. So I guess I was confused what date you want, what do you want to put in here? So the original proposal was
Yeah.
a little bit different
Right.
from H719.
Mhm.
So that had proposed that they had to hold a hearing within,
And issue a decision. I didn't want them, I don't think I supposed any 90 days. I think we just heard 6 months. They should issue a decision. It wasn't even a shall.
okay, so there's no deadline by which they hold a hearing,
Mm-hmm.
just that they issue a decision within 180 days.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was, the panel shall adjourn the hearing and issue a decision within 180
Okay.
days, but not,
Well, what's the
Okay.
90 days?
so we're taking that out.
Okay, that's good.
Okay. And
So,
then
good.
you want to strike the deemed approved?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
181 days. That's half, that's 6
6
months.
months.
Long time.
Yeah, but I think what Ted said is if you give them a short deadline, you're going to get a lot of rejections of
You'll get a lot of
projects,
denials.
denials of projects that
I-
we would like to go
maybe
through
I
because
didn't-
it's a negotiating.
Yeah, maybe I didn't say this, but I had intended that we include unless both parties agree to
Oh,
an
yes.
extension.
Okay, but, right, so there are parties.
Unless the applicant agrees to an extension.
And for an applicant.
I think both have to.
Yeah,
Okay.
that gives.
I don't know what we say. Yeah. Or do you?
Unless both parties agree to an extension.
It really would be the applicant because the town would want an extension.
I'm not the issue to the decision.
Yeah, that.
Well, they
want
will
that
issue
to
a
go
decision.
away.
They don't want it.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
That's still, to me, that is still a long time.
Well, but Ann's point,
I understand, and,
you know,
I
they
mean, and
meet
it's about,
twice a month.
Nothing says they don't have to do it.
Right.
This, they're saying they have to do it in 3 months, they meet twice a month. And sometimes they've got 2 and 3 projects on at
Well,
the same
mhm,
time.
And sometimes you don't get a complete application. I mean, I was on a project review board and the developer didn't give a complete application. And was kept being told. And
Do you want to say after the?
after the complete application.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
should say.
complete
I would say
after
a
the
complete
complete
application.
Okay.
Yes,
Let us know.
that would be better.
Okay.
What line is, after the complete application?
Yeah.
It's fine.
You know what? We're making progress.
Well,
Good, on page 12.
we finish with this in 180 days.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, we're not even given 180 days to do our work, Randy, sorry.
Do the whole budget for the whole.
Yeah.
Section 18 is the sticky point. I just put like another thought bubble out there. We are hearing that some compromise would be nice because this is where good projects get chilled.
Right, and we heard 1%.
Right.
Mike, I think Mike proposed 1%, which I think Anne had also.
So I put two different thresholds in to consider together
You have 3% or 25 people.
who were involved in the process.
Okay,
That's like my thought about could we move, oh,
1%, okay, because that gives your towns with 200 people.
right.
20 people.
3% is still 3 people in a
Yeah.
town of 100. And 25 people in a bigger town would just have had to submit written comments or participate instead of 10.
Yeah.
And we can play with the numbers, but that was my kind of like, can we live with this for right now?
And I like Chip's alternative, which was 2 numbers and it was the largest of the 2. So I think it was 1% or 10. So we could, so you had to have at least.
Yeah. And the larger up, but I'm saying 25 would be the minimum.
Mhm.
And we're just encouraging them to participate in the process.
But again, you gotta do the small town, so that
And then the 3% captures like that's
Yeah, so it's 3%.
that's 6 people in a 200-person town. That's, you know,
That works,
Okay.
okay.
it's 15 people in a 500-person town. So
3% of the two.
yeah, I'm thank you for helping with my math. But yeah, it's sort of like we're taking a little baby step toward
Yeah, no,
less,
that helps.
Of course, more engagement.
more engagement.
I think more
Less
engagement
chilling.
is the key here.
Yes. Wow.
Okay,
The
so let's
wording of
just,
that is important. You
Yeah.
can't say at least 3% or 25, because by that, you would say the larger that number would be 3% if you're using Burlington as the example.
Right.
And so you have a much larger number, is that what you intend?
I'm intending either one.
But you have to say higher though.
Well,
Which
I
one's
don't,
higher
I
or
don't,
which one's
I
lower?
think you do, because
I don't think
it's
you
the
do.
25
do.
It's
So-
25 people who have
participated.
participated in the
Right.
process.
So in Burlington, it would be the 25 people who participated. Or it would be 3% of the population that went and did a petition.
So if you, this would stop 3 people who
Yeah.
didn't, 10 people who didn't have anything to do
Right.
with it, just afterwards decided, I'm gonna appeal.
Right.
They couldn't do that.
Yeah.
25 people in Burlington that participated in the process.
What does that mean?
Submitted written comments or came to a
Okay,
public
okay.
hearing.
Or
So-
so, not just sit in the room.
Right.
so in a town of Reading,
Yeah.
700 people, it would be 21 people. 3% would be 21 people.
Right.
That's a reasonable number to, I think, to have to weigh in.
So what you're saying then, 3% of the people who participated.
No.
No,
No, 3% of the 3% of the people would have to weigh in on a project, either by coming to a meeting.
No, no,
or-
no, 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 no,
Is that what-
no.
I thought.
No, no.
Have to.
Let me take another step.
Okay.
3% of the entire population.
Yes. 3%,
Or,
in there.
25 people.
and they don't have to do anything. They don't have to have participated.
3%.
The 3% don't have to have participated in anything.
I thought they did.
Or the 25 people who participated.
Ready?
So I wrote
That's what my intent was.
a minimum of 3% of the most recent census population estimate, which may or may not have participated in the proceeding, or 25 persons.
Okay.
Or, so it's whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to fix it
You're at
anyway.
3%, so
Yeah.
probably everywhere.
It's in the appeal section itself, so this is just for you to consider, because it needs additional language, because these appeal sections are complicated.
Yes, they are.
They are. But if we're talking about what we were talking about before, people can live with these 2 distinct paths you can take.
So either, and it's not higher or lower, it's
No.
either.
Yeah.
So 3%. So you take Burlington, 40,000 times 3%. So you've got then at that point, 1,200 people.
Yeah.
Or 25 people,
25 people actually showed up.
all right, and that would apply to Burlington, a town of 40,000 people.
Right.
A town of Ripton that has 536 people, rounded to 500.
Right.
Then 3% would be 15 people.
Right.
Or 25 people.
Mm-hmm. It's just giving all the towns the
Yeah, so
different.
it's lower, number one is lower, or
It really depends, yeah, it's like.
It depends on the project, it depends on the town.
Right,
And what's the victory, you have to have half the population.
Well, right, so Victory has 60 people, so.
Is Victory our smallest town?
Is it one in?
so is that like less than a person? Do we need to round up to the nearest person?
Like 4 people.
You probably should, if Victory is, let me.
Do we actually need to round up to the nearest person?
Anyway, I think that
I don't,
this is.
so you're talking, so I'll just say, I don't know how many towns have less than 200 people, but when you get smaller than that, it gets weird in this.
Yeah,
map.
Victory would have to have 1.8 people.
We can round down even. We can say
Round
round
up.
it down. Oh, you wanna round it up? Okay.
1.8, you round.
Round it up to the
Around.
nearest
If it's
person.
0.4 person, you have one.
I know.
If it's 0.6 person,
That's true.
if it's.
We can't have less than
0.5,
one person.
you split the baby.
Yeah.
Okay, so round it up to the
Literally,
nearest person.
yeah.
Love
It just
Vermont.
needs to be not one
Just
person.
have people to know. it's-
Well, Victory, 3% of the population.
Yeah, but just building a new house, in Victory maybe. a
They'll
challenge.
all have to agree.
I don't think they're gonna be building quadruplexes in Victory because there aren't enough people to live in.
Okay, how about going to section 19 and see if we can get through your field bond?
Alright, so the language in section 19, which is on page 21, has not changed.
It's either gonna be in or out, because no one's come forward to say, we'll study this informally in a way that we want in statute. I have a feeling this conversation won't go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking from what I heard from the committee, we're not ready to say an appeal bond is a valuable tool to add to the mix right now.
I don't think we're set up to deal with it.
Right?
I mean,
Yeah.
there's more people in Boston than there are in the state of Vermont.
The concept is,
I think the concept is worth,
Concept,
So it's in there now, if we wanna keep talking about the concept, I was trying to make this ready by Friday, which, you know, may or may not be the case, but I didn't wanna take it out without everyone saying, do you want it in or out? I mean,
Oh, you can always say the court may require.
yeah.
Ah,
They could throw out,
We leave it in.
So I
without-
will just tell you, the court already has the ability to do that.
Mhm.
To set appeal bonds.
Mhm.
why don't they?
And they do in certain circumstances, this way, within this is very specific.
do they have the authority to put an appeal bond forward that's for more than the attorney's fees?
I don't know off the top of my head, there's,
but that's enough.
it's typically used in, okay, everything I'm about to say is
Yeah.
I'm not a litigation attorney,
Right,
I
right.
don't work on it, I have
Yeah.
been doing research on it. I think some of the time that it's used is when there's a very specific thing in controversy.
Yes.
Where where the amount of risk, the dollar amount of risk is clearly known.
Yeah,
And so the court says, okay, put up the appeal.
exactly.
So I think that is where it's largely used in Vermont, although I am not
Yeah.
a litigation attorney, so I believe it is in the court rules already. But this would be very specific and would be required.
and that's the environmental
Just
court,
follow.
or all of that.
So I think it's definitely in the appellate,
Wastewater people are gonna charge my own.
consumption.
And that probably would include the environmental court.
But I don't.
Yeah,
I
okay,
can't-
so,
Okay.
so someone would have to own this outside of committee and find the appropriate either ledge counsel or other attorney to work with on this section, or we should take it out, I think.
If the court has it, at this stage in the game, if this has gotta come out tomorrow, I'd take it out.
Yeah, I mean, it needs more work because even if we wanna expand what the court has the ability to do now. That would require more work for
Exactly,
us.
That
yeah,
would be
someone would
really
have to take
tough.
on that work.
Yeah, that should be a bill in itself.
And I'm hoping the administration takes on the work to listen to Massachusetts and, you know, they put in a,
If Massachusetts had the appeal bond.
Yes,
they do it, we have them in to say,
How-
if you're gonna do it differently than we did a little bit. And we haven't had time to massage that, otherwise and we've had our own folks come in and say, this seems like a feel-good tool, but then we don't think it's gonna help us,
I
you
would
know?
only propose we strike section
Yeah.
18 for the moment.
I would,
Okay. Striking
I think it's 19.
appeal bond, we're striking the
Section
appeal bond.
19,
Yeah.
in draft 8.1.
because I,
I'll raise the issue about that meeting with the administration. and
Please.
See if I
Yeah.
can get the governor's issue ridiculous.
Yeah. The biggest concern we heard is a lot of people could get around this and then, you know, the indigent.
Trump.
So here we are with appeal to the E court.
So the new language on page 20, it changes what was there previously.
22.
Yes, section 20, page 22. It shall be the goal of the environmental division to hear a case regarding appeals of appropriate municipal panel within 60 days following the case being filed with the division and issue a decision to 90 days following the close of the case.
So this is.
I asked for like aspirational language if we're giving them another judge. That's all.
Right, I think this is good.
Yeah, I think this is good too.
No, they have not seen it shall be the goal, but zoning sat there and said, you can give us some kind of goal if you give us another judge. I don't know if you meant in statute, but for now, I thought it's good to talk about it because we're giving them another judge.
Right,
We
and
want
we
a
can't
goal.
we can't require that they be done by a certain time.
Right.
But, and he said they have internal goals too, so I think this is good.
However, I think you might put contingent upon the addition of
Well, but
You could
it's
require it.
a goal though,
it is,
so it's not enforceable.
In fact, we could say when we go to appropriations, that section in our mind is contingent on saying you're getting a new judge.
yes.
Otherwise, they know it's impossible too. They get judicial financial requests all the time.
Okay,
I asked to have the appropriation for municipal and regional planning up to 500,000, but
wait a minute, we're, okay, we're okay with the judge. They are, of course, losing one of the judges is retiring this year.
they have the money for that position.
Yeah.
Uh,
But I just mean that they'll be hiring 2 new E-court judges if this goes through.
Oh, we have all those attorneys. Let's make up for it.
Well,
Yeah.
you have your, section 21, where you added a Superior Court judge, but you've got, I assume you've dealt with the pushback you get from the judiciary of not being specific that it's for this
Yes.
particular purpose.
yes,
And so they can use it in criminal court or
So,
family court.
hence the
wherever.
goal. Hence the goal saying,
no,
you
well,
know,
why can't we be specific?
he didn't want us to because they have varying caseloads. Because this is specific enough in his mind.
This is the pushback that we had. If you remember when I raised last year, the issue of adding a judge to the environmental
Yes.
court, and they didn't want to do that because they didn't want to be constrained with specifics.
Right. Especially if we're creating a fewer appeal.
Separation of powers.
Mhm.
We
We're
do
creating
not
fewer appeals, we
regulate
want them to
that.
go faster.
We could make it as a hope here too. Our goal would be.
I think the hope is where it's supposed to live.
Okay.
I don't know that in an appropriation we put our hopes and dreams.
If
Okay,
they
I don't think Jane wants
we
that.
won't give them another judge next time.
Right.
Okay, and
That's,
the appropriation in section 22, I think is good.
But I'm okay letting it go
Mhm.
if we're increasing the municipal and regional planning fund through the property tax transfer.
But that has not gone through yet, so.
Right, so we can keep them
but
both,
it's in this bill.
right, it's in the same bill.
Yeah, but we don't
And
know what's
half
gonna
of this
make.
committee is on finance.
Well, we don't wanna take general fund money, Allison, for this, if with the
Yeah.
property tax transfer piece goes through.
What's our likelihood of the property transfer tax going through?
You have 3 members of finance
But
here.
they're gonna vote on it here.
Okay, so we heard Peter Tucker also this morning.
The realtors are upset,
The
and I
realtors are-
understand.
The real-
Because
Someone will be
Yeah.
upset about a tax, and that's probably the fewest people we've had upset about a tax
Okay,
that
so
I've ever
there's,
heard.
But they're happy with many other things.
Right,
So,
I would be happier. This is on second homes,
Mhm.
right? Okay, I'm not gonna fight that.
Well, I said we haven't heard enough testimony
we
yet.
haven't.
Fine.
Right,
And I want to hear more testimony. So what is the anticipated adverse effect, if any?
right.
oh,
Right,
And what's happened to other jurisdictions that have done things like this? Has there
Right.
been any effect?
Are you okay hearing that in finance?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I
No,
told Peter,
I
yours
really
is
have
your
to
thing, yeah,
I
Given our
would really
time.
like to lower the threshold at the bottom where you get a
Mhm.
lower rate.
Yeah.
Cause
Oh.
that's.
I don't
The
think
affordable
I did
housing
that.
You can't buy a
I'm not
garage
interested
for
in that.
that.
the affordable housing folks are asking that to come up to 150, I shouldn't say
I
that,
was
So
thinking at least 2.
Okay, we
I think there are folks who would agree with you,
we could get to the
but they
new
wanna see
action.
the effect on it.
But if,
Basically, use an elevator.
Yeah, That's a great elevator.
Yeah.
Love it.
I love it.
So let's strike the
Yeah,
probation for now in the good faith.
Not
I
maybe-
gotta go.
In-
Strike the general fund.
Yeah.
Yes.
In hopes of the property transfer tax on seasonal, on non-resident households.
Yes.
Do you wanna do a couple easy, really fast or not?
Well, we can let Randy go, and I don't know if you care about the $5 million tax credit. We'll just go
We
for
will
next
deal with
week.
that finance.
He does,
exactly, yeah.
Appropriations will tell us if we can
Right.
afford to give up $2 more million.
Right.
We desperately need
Yeah.
this $5 million for us to achieve
Right.
half of what we
Well,
want.
and after that, we get back to the tiers where we have had lots of conversation and no,
Can I just let you all know, just the sign and the self-certification?
or in here?
Yes,
Oh, let's look at those.
cause I think those might be.
Yeah.
So on page 7,
Okay.
7
So
of
wait a minute,
60,
we're going back?
section 4.
Yeah. Because this
So
is
these are
totally
a
new.
couple of, it's not completely new.
Well, like,
but
I'm sorry, we haven't looked at
Yes,
the
we
language.
haven't looked at the language.
Yeah.
So on page 7,
I'm with you.
this is the sign requirement
I see it.
in Act 250 applications. And the
Oh, I'm
purpose,
so happy.
wow.
She's so happy.
Laughing at me.
You're
I
feeling,
think they said just reach out to the chair. Otherwise, Randy and I would have some notes.
No, this is 127. This is part of the tax.
But they're just saying the chair, not the whole committee, not your whole legislature.
her
Just saying-
shoulders
And
are
I
out.
will purposely call everyone feedback.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a very high level of service.
I try to.
That's wonderful.
And has,
60.
does amazing constituent
Yeah.
service.
Okay.
I try.
Okay,
I
Well,
want,
sign.
yeah, and if this is too much, just say, but, or too much to talk about now. So,
Well, we can at least
I-
look at
I-
it.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
gotta go because I've got Reigate coming.
sure, the purpose of this is just so that folks who are not part of the official process are aware of an Act 50 application happening on a property. That's the purpose of having the
And
sign.
people look at the language yourselves if you're concerned about the sign and
There's no,
Size in it, sorry.
size.
oh, I thought I put the,
I,
oh, no, actually, I want the district commission
do
to,
you want the district?
well, not the district, the, NRB.
To make a rule
I
about
thought I
the size of
had
the sign.
2 different sizes.
Oh, sorry. So this is what was in your language though, and then also number of days.
I can.
So,
Yeah.
so I didn't address the sign.
Size duration.
But then also, did you want to?
Yeah,
Okay, well,
actually,
let's look at the other language.
okay, let's look at the other one, the
Okay,
self-certification.
I can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
On page 9, this is I had that as a separate bill, but I didn't. This is a very inexpensive, easy to do enforcement mechanism for the NRB to require, folks who already have a permit to demonstrate that they are in compliance, to just sign a form that
Self-certification.
says, I am in compliance. They don't have to do it, it's just, it's just a good thing, and I worked with the NRB to create this language over the summer and the fall, and.
And they're okay with
and
it.
they, yes,
I can.
yes.
Okay.
Well, I know nothing about tiers because I haven't seen a map.
Well,
So
we
can I
have
just,
we have the NRB report.
Let's let
tomorrow is
Yeah.
Friday.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yes, I will let you know.
Okay.
I need an answer soon.
We need an answer on
Okay.
whether
And-
we can
but
introduce this
you-
and then recommit it.
Sit tight because I think I will be making a strong case that we fit for longer. And look, we're taking it to the floor anyway. They can start looking at what we've taken to the floor and for certain pieces. And we can still pull it back in.
Okay.
So I think there's a compromise in there that allows us to pull it back in either way.
And that. Yeah. I mean, they've got other things they can.
They-
And we
exactly.
aren't doing that
Right.
much with Act 250.
Right, we have a lot of the big other sections.
Yeah.
There's no other housing committee working on all of it together.
And also, I think we're doing important work for interim and we haven't even gotten to the quarter mile already. That language is in here.
Which may, we
Let's let us all eat. Let's let Helen go.
So we have 12:15.